My entitled mother-in-law keeps asking me about my inheritance that I'm getting from my dead grandparents, constantly pestering me and going behind my back to try and find out how much money I'm getting. And at this point, I feel like I'm going crazy because right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my grandparents recently passed away 10 months ago. They were extremely hard workers and ended up having a decent amount of money to leave to the family. I was extremely close with them, so their passing really impacted me. For context on the will, I'm getting a nice gift of money from them, but it's nowhere by any means life-changing. But regardless, I just don't see it as my mother-in-law's business. My mother-in-law is the sort of person that when talking about someone will always refer to their wealth. She is obsessed with what people have. She has a real victim mentality, so often she'll say, "Oh, I wish I had this. How lucky is she?" She also is a massive bragger and a name dropper. For example, my sister-in-law was dating a wealthy man, and it was all my mother-in-law would ever talk about. She didn't even refer to him by his name. I used to have a good relationship with her, but she has said some very hurtful things, so now I really struggle with her and find interacting with her really painful. She lives out of town but has been back to visit 5 times since my grandparents passed away, and while the will is being dealt with, every time without fail she asks me, "Oh honey, how is everything going with your grandparents' will?" Or she'll ask me, "Is your family selling your grandfather's house and business?" I try to keep my answers to one word and roll into another conversation, but she is getting more persistent. I know she is pretty open about her finances with her family, but my family isn't like that. Most recently, she directly asked my husband what I received as an inheritance when I wasn't around. He knows I want to respect my grandparents who were private people and not talk about specifics. So he said I received something, but he isn't sure exactly how much, even though he definitely does. Well, my mother-in-law sulked about and didn't talk to him for many days, as apparently it's not a big deal. I mean, family shares this stuff, and I just want to know that you're okay. Now, my husband is softly spoken and avoids conflicts at all costs, so he really just tries to keep the peace without any kind of arguments. I know a more direct question is 100% coming from her soon, particularly as we are selling my grandparents' house this week. So is there any suggestion on how to deal with all of this? I don't want to have a confrontation with her. I mean, she does play the victim no matter what, or one with my husband, even though he should be setting boundaries, but I really don't like how she keeps asking, and I find it pretty disrespectful. I just don't see why she needs to know any of this information. And at this point, I'm so frustrated that I really don't know what to do. Okay, this really pisses me off because this is so uncalled for. She has visited your house 5 times and she lives literally in another town. And she's only doing that because she wants a piece of the pie, or what she assumes the pie would be. Like seriously, this is so toxic. And it's such an awkward thing to ask somebody. Like in my opinion, you just don't ask about other people's money. You don't get involved in that. That is such a weird, murky territory that I personally believe is completely out of line. It's just out of bounds. It's something you don't talk about and you just leave that alone. I would even put that up there with like politics and religion to an extent, especially when we're talking about like family and like family stuff going on. Bringing finances into the mix is so intrusive. And I think it's so funny that your mother-in-law is not even like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for your loss." But instead she's like, "Okay, so how much money did you get? Is that will getting figured out? What's going on?" While also going around your husband, who is incredibly spineless in my opinion, and asking him what's going on and how much money you're getting. Because guess what? You've got it right. He needs to start setting boundaries. He cannot allow that woman to walk into your life and act like this, even if she does play the victim, which by the way is just a cop-out, and it's a place for her to hide when someone inevitably calls her out. That's why she does it. Like that's the only reason she acts like that. So in my opinion, I would be very direct the next time she asks a question like that, because there is no way any of these questions are even remotely appropriate. And I think if you do that, hopefully she'll get the picture and leave you guys alone, especially if your husband's involved, because I really think if he's not involved, this is just gonna fall on deaf ears. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My boyfriend says that I start all of our arguments, and he says that he blames me for our problems, leaving me wondering if it truly is all my fault, because right now I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, lately my boyfriend and I have been arguing a lot. For reference, I'm 29 years old and my boyfriend is 48. Yesterday, he told me I'm the cause of all of our problems and that I provoke every single argument. He's always kind of implied it, but hearing him say it so directly really hurt. He also called me a liar and overly sensitive, and that really stung. So I asked him, is that really all you see in me? If I'm causing all the problems, then why do you even want to be with me? And I wasn't trying to start another fight. I genuinely wanted to understand, but now I don't know what to think. I mean, is it really all my fault? I told him that arguments shouldn't be about blame, but about working through things together. But but he just kept saying, well, you like arguing, don't you? You start all the fights. He's generally a kind person, but sometimes I don't feel that kindness from him. I couldn't sleep last night. I just kept replaying everything, wondering if I could have handled things better. I did say some hurtful things too, and I do feel guilty. I pointed out that he has a pattern of blaming his exes for his past failed relationships, and he told me that before it was always his exes, but it wasn't fair of me to bring that up. I also hold on to certain things, like the time that we had an argument on a holiday, and I walked off and sat by the sidewalk crying, and he then took pictures of me while sitting next to me smiling at his phone camera. When I asked why, he said it was to show me how I ruined his evening. That moment still lingers, and sometimes I bring it up because he never really apologized. I've noticed that I cry more easily now, and it might be dramatic, but sometimes I just can't help it. Last night, when he was ignoring me and tried to leave, I said, if you leave now, it's over. I know that was toxic and I apologized afterwards, but I was just hurt because he was ignoring me. I'm scared of being too insecure or even a narcissist. I want to be better, but I don't know how. And as much as I feel lost in this relationship, leaving feels impossible. I love him too much, and if I left, I know he would never let me see his dogs ever again. I love them dearly, and the thought of losing them too just breaks me even more. What should I do? Okay, what in the world is going on right now? Like, this guy's an awful boyfriend. He sounds like a really big piece of crap. Like, just absolutely not a good person at all. First off, the fact that you're even trying to pretend like he's a kind person is absolutely a lie, because this guy does not come off as kind. He comes off as a massive jerk who would rather take pictures of his girlfriend crying on the sidewalk instead of trying to like sit down, apologize, and figure things out. Like, what are you talking about? This guy is not a nice person, and I don't know why you're putting up with it. Because no, you're not being too insecure. You're not being dramatic. Like, I think you're asking for the base level of respect you would want out of a relationship. So in my opinion, if you did want to leave, it's totally possible. And sure, you won't see the dogs anymore, but my God, you would be away from this toxic weirdo, because that's all this guy really seems like to me. So hopefully you can see that this guy is not all he's cracked up to be, and that you absolutely can do better, because your boyfriend doesn't sound like he loves you in the slightest. And instead, he really sounds like a massive bully. My mom and dad are the only bullies I've ever had my entire life, as they are also the only people to ever make me cry. And even to this day, they still affect me, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I don't remember much about my childhood at the house, but one thing I do remember is being mocked and bullied by my parents. Every time I would cry, they would laugh at me and mock my crying. This specifically would happen during fights, and I would never cry to them about something personal, because they were the ones who made me cry. They would make me cry over small things too, like a stain on my clothing or me closing the door too hard. And honestly, not much else comes to mind except for me crying. They still do these things to this day, and I'm now 21 years old. I thought I would have gained a little respect as I got older, but I was wrong. One thing my dad likes to do is accuse me of not taking accountability if I tell him that one of his accusations is untrue. For example, there was a time when someone left a crack in a glass cup, and he immediately assumed it was me. I told him it wasn't me, and he shamed me by saying I don't take accountability. He also told me that just because I don't pay for things around the house, I suddenly don't care about the items they buy. This happens a lot, and to stay on his good side, I have to accept his assumptions, even though they're not true. Either way, I get in trouble. My dad also has a limit on how often I can go out. If I go out one day, I can't go out again for the rest of the week. Sometimes I tell them I'm going to work, turn off my locations, and go do something else instead. Now, when it comes to my mom, she confuses me so much. One day, I think she likes me, and the next, I think she doesn't. She pushes me away and then pulls me back in. One time, we got into a huge fight about why I was upset on my birthday, and this happened on my 18th birthday. The reason I was upset was because the first restaurant we went to had a long wait, and my family told me to choose another place. All I said was, okay, let me think. And then my sister got mad at me for some reason, and it made me feel a little emotional, so I started crying. My parents then looked back at me and said, why are you crying? Oh my God, there's no reason to cry. I tried explaining why I was upset, but then they just got mad at me. My mom and I were then cleaning and washing the dishes later on, and we touched on the topic of my 18th birthday. It turned into an argument, and I said something like, well, that's stupid. And then right there, my mom tried to hit me. She's a head shorter than me, so I was just trying to avoid getting hit in the face. But one thing I would never do is put my hands on my mom. I tried leaving the house because the whole situation caught me by surprise, but she tried blocking me from leaving and took my car keys. So I left on foot on a hot summer day, adrenaline pumping through my body. I didn't realize I had scratches on my arms from my mom trying to hit me and sores forming on my feet as I walked on hot concrete. My dad found me and picked me up, trying to calm me down, and my brother was there with him. When I got home, my mom was sitting there in tears and told my dad that I had put my hands on her. She had no marks, but I did. I showed my dad my marks, and my mom said something that still breaks my heart. She looked at me and said, she did that to herself. You know how she is. She lies all the time. My own brother then said said that he saw me putting my hands on her. So I gave up after that and I just kept quiet. Now, my brother, for some reason, likes to see me get in trouble. I don't know why he lied that day, but he does that often, and I always forgive him even if I don't want to. My parents also love calling me crazy, always telling me that I need help. Sometimes I overthink what they say, and it starts affecting my mental health. I try to limit interactions with them because every time I see them, we can't go a minute without arguing or them giving me snarky remarks. I still love my parents dearly when they're not this way. I know I'm not perfect either, but I just can't take their behavior anymore. They're the only people who can make me cry, and I'm doing the best I can to toughen up and not let the dumb things they say affect me, but it's hard. I think maybe I'm too soft, but honestly at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, first and foremost, please tell me that the original poster does not live with them anymore. Seriously, these people are awful. They're not good people. If you do live with them, then you need to figure out a plan to get out of that house. That does not sound like a safe environment in the slightest. These people are monsters and they're treating you like garbage. They're not kind people. They're not loving people. They are awful in like the worst way possible. I mean, just look at your mom and your brother. Your mom claimed that you hit her even though she hit you, and then your brother, being the nasty monster that he is, tried to be like, oh yeah, I saw her do it. Like, what are you talking about? None of that's true. You need to speak up and get out of there. Like, this is not a loving environment. These people don't love you. Like, they are textbook narcissists and you do not need that in your life because the way they're treating you is incredibly bad. Am I the jerk for not being willing to split the cost of a group gift when I literally was not even included in the card and the gift itself? Here's what happened. Okay, so one of my friends got a new job recently and some of my friends decided to get her a little gift. I was in the group chat where it got brought up, but I was super busy with studying and I didn't say much. A couple people were throwing around ideas and I figured they'd update us later. Well, last weekend they gave her the gift, which is an AirPod Pro, and posted a little photo of her holding it with a card. And you know what? I didn't even know they picked something out already. I also wasn't asked to sign the card or even told when they were giving it to her. Then that same night, one of the girls' Venmo requested me $20 for my share. I asked what it was for, and she said, well, the gift obviously, like I should have just known or something like that. I told her I didn't get to sign the card or even know what they picked, and she said it didn't matter because I was part of the group and it's just what we all agreed to. But it's like, okay, but I never agreed. I don't think I was included and I wasn't even asked. After that, they are saying that I'm making it awkward and that it's not about the money. It's about celebrating a friend, but I kind of feel like I was treated like an afterthought and still expected to pay. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because right now I am incredibly confused. No, you're not the jerk. This is really weird. Seriously, they pick out a gift and then after the fact they're like, oh, by the way, because you were in the group chat, you owe us $20. This is clearly just for the gift, obviously. I mean, you didn't know about it, but you do now. It's like, no, if I'm not signing that stupid card, then guess what? I'm not going to be paying for the gift because they move forward without you and still expect you to pay for it. Like, what is that about? These people are idiots if they think this is making things awkward, because this is really awkward for you, even though you didn't do anything to like contribute to the gift. You were added into this group chat and then you were never talked to ever again until they wanted money. And that says a lot more about them than it does about you. So yeah, these people suck and you are definitely not the jerk, because if they wanted you to have any kind of like financial contribution, then they should have included you from the beginning to the end. My mom is the most toxic person I know, and after enduring it for so many years as well as going through therapy, I seriously thought I was the crazy one until one of my friends finally admitted that they no longer like her as well. And at this point, I can't wait to move out because I seriously want to put this all behind me. Here's what happened. Until I sought therapy last year, I wondered for my whole life if my concerns were valid. I wrote a list of 95 reasons why I dislike my mom, which I condensed down for the internet. I will not reveal my exact age, but I am female in my mid-20s and my mom is in her late 50s. There are many details I'm leaving out as well, so in the event my family read this, they wouldn't know that it's me. I trimmed this down multiple times and there's a lot of missing information. So to start things out, I have an older brother who's a few years older than me. As a child, I noticed that he was always prioritized over me during family conversations or even dinner. Due to my brother's poor life decisions, my parents' lives will always revolve around his issues more than mine. My mother also treated us differently. When I got glasses, my mother was upset because I no longer fit her family's beauty standards. I was not allowed to wear glasses in photos, but my brother was. She also let him watch rated R movies at an earlier age than me, let him smoke the herb, and was still upset with me when I said that I did, and doesn't bat an eye when he skips church while she gets upset when I do. She would pick up my brother from school if he had a headache, but force me to go to school when I was sick with an autoimmune disease. Beginning in 2nd grade, I had to help mom do every job that she ever had. She always acted incapable, and honestly, I think she is. Like, she is just quite stupid. My brother never had to help her, and my mom always knew I was more responsible than my brother, and yet she is against me moving in with my fiance before marriage. My brother got to move in with his girlfriend and mom didn't seem to mind. I mentioned earlier about my brother's poor life decisions. She always pushed his problems onto my dad, who now has anxiety. Lastly, she failed to recognize the codependency issues between her and her son, which mirror her own mom and brother. Mom has always had a very tense relationship with her toxic mother. Those issues were not addressed properly before she had to move in with us, and mom has never sought counseling for any of her family problems. My mother attempts to portray her family as this good Christian family, but we are far from it. Meanwhile, her marriage to my dad has never been one I've looked up to. The relationship has always felt tense and awkward, and mom doesn't seem to appreciate dad for providing for the family for their entire marriage, or for dealing with their son. She just loves to complain at him for little things. When I saw counseling last year, she insincerely apologized for everything she's ever done to me. She failed to recognize my autistic symptoms, and I had to pester her for about a year before she took me to get a diagnosis as a high school senior. I've always felt like she relied on me for happiness. She has expressed jealousy of my talents and tried to live vicariously through her children. She is easily set off, and I always had to watch what I said around her to avoid a hissy fit. Until I went to college, I felt like I had to revolve every decision around her. She would fake emotions to get me to feel worse about things that I did, and she openly admitted to doing that to her students multiple times. My mother overworked me in elementary school, as I had to help her with her job after school. Then I had other extracurriculars after that. She wondered why I was falling behind in math, and actually blamed my teacher for it. She also frequently picked me up from school during math time whenever my brother wasn't feeling well, and when I didn't have friends, she manipulated me into thinking my classmates were the problem when it was really me. She does not understand boundaries and gets upset when my brother and I politely try to settle them. She cites that she is in her 50s and knows more than we do about boundaries. Anytime anyone tries to criticize her, she just shuts them down and defends herself. She is also incredibly lazy. There have been many times where she gaslit me into believing I did things that I never did. To this day, she still views me as a teenager, even though she acts like one herself. She lacks awareness of her emotions, which is why she quickly escalates serious conversations. Despite claiming to love gay people, she did not believe or accept my bisexuality. She has expressed negative views of other religions, often in front of my friends, and she would not accept my religion, nor would she want to be educated about it. She is transphobic, xenophobic, and openly sexist. Despite her constantly speaking out against other groups of people, her daughter is knowingly a Buddhist, and her son has all kinds of issues. And despite being an educator, she voted in a way that honestly I can't understand, and she wonders why her friends just stopped talking to her. I know she is going to try and indoctrinate her grandson, which is one of the many reasons that I don't want any children. Anytime her job assigned something that she didn't want to do, she gave up and just quit, even though she always told her children to never give up. She's fine with me and my fiance spending quality time together, but not okay with us living together. She spends hours watching TV every night, yet she claims that she doesn't have any time to clean her house. She says she is easygoing and flexible, but she really isn't. And trust me, I could go on and on about her hypocrisy. My mother has never had good eating habits, and she always gains back the weight that she loses. She won't exercise because she dislikes sweating, and her lack of exercise is now being reflected in her difficulty to move around. She went from being stronger than most men to the laziest person I know. She has also turned our family home into a storage unit. She constantly buys stuff off of Amazon, and she rarely gets rid of anything. Mom blames dad for not being able to throw anything away, but she is also the problem. And if dad and I had the choice, our house would be rid of all of her junk. Recently, my friend admitted that she disliked my mother, and she always had. And I was so happy to hear someone else say it. And so I wondered if strangers on the internet wouldn't like her either. But with all things considered, I will be moving out this summer as soon as I secure my next job. And so hopefully I can soon enough put all of this behind me. Yeah, that sounds like a messy situation, and yeah, your mom is incredibly toxic. It goes without saying that she clearly had favorites, and you were definitely not one of them. She had such a big double standard, it's not even funny. So yeah, in my opinion, I don't blame you for cutting her off and not wanting anything to do with her, because the way she treated you was completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for not letting my coworker interrupt me anymore, as he constantly does this to literally everybody in the office? And after dealing with this for so long, as well as sitting idly by while he just interrupts everybody around him, I'm finally taking a stand and trying to get him to shut up. And at this point, I'm not sure if I'm the jerk, and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I've been at my job for 3 years now, and in personal and professional conversations, my coworker continually interrupts me. And this is not just me, but it's everyone. Usually, someone will start to speak, and after about 2 seconds, he will interrupt. Not always about the same subject. Sometimes he will just spark into a completely different topic. There's professional conversations that have to happen, and we literally sit right next to each other. I always thought that's just how his brain works, or he's got a different communication style or something like that. Well, recently I started to just literally talk louder and not stopping when he interrupts. It usually leads to both of us talking for about 1 to 2 seconds, and sometimes he will stop and slow down, and sometimes he just keeps going, almost ignoring what I'm saying. I feel crazy and I feel like everyone else at work notices. I then just asked him to stop interrupting me, but when I brought this up to a friend, they said that that's a jerk move to do, even though it didn't work. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, I honestly cannot stand when people do this because there really is no good excuse. Like seriously, just wait your turn. Wait until the other person is done talking and then jump in. Don't just interrupt them mid-sentence and think it's gonna be okay. Like that's obnoxious. That really is obnoxious. So in my opinion, I don't think there's anything wrong with you literally addressing this in front of everybody and just being straightforward with this guy and saying, please don't interrupt me. And I think saying this in public really would make a big difference. At least that's what I would do, because then he will absolutely know right then and there that this is wrong and that he needs to change. So no, you're definitely not the jerk for addressing this, because this really is incredibly rude and you do not deserve this in the slightest. My corrupt and sketchy job plans on firing most of the office as well as firing me after I fixed and repaired all of the IT support system. But after watching them lie, cheat, lay off, and gamble our wages for several months, I decided to get some revenge by changing their passwords and effectively bringing their entire business to a screeching halt. Here's what happened. Years back, I worked as the IT director for a small brokerage firm. These types of places try to run lean, so I was the only IT personnel. I took the job, but I was a bit underqualified, if I'm being completely truthful. The reason they gave it to me, though, was because I was young, and they thought that they could underpay me. And you know what? They were completely right. It was $10,000 more than I ever made in my life. I had an awful job at the time, so I took it for the resume title step up, and honestly, it did work out as a good resume builder. I struggled and had to do an endless amount of learning on the job, but I made huge improvements. Now, the day-to-day was sketchy there. We only had 5 employees supporting the 4 partners and the 70+ brokers. Now, the brokers didn't really work there. They rented a desk for a percentage, so they didn't care how many brokers there were on staff. There were a couple of gems, but ultimately we were understaffed because they looked at full-time employees like we were stealing from them. They made us work long hours and work weekends with no overtime. Everyone was underpaid or an overpaid buddy of somebody. Worse was the awful partners. The 4 partners were constantly doing shady stuff. One partner would take money from the broker commissions and go to Vegas with it. If he lost the money, we are talking like maybe $100,000 per trip, he would just let the brokers know there's a hold from the bank and their commissions are coming in slowly. Another broker straight up asked me how to hide his affair from his wife. Another had me come to his house on company time and install some audio and video equipment after hours, all without paying me. When I came on board, they were 10 years out of date on technology. I helped them get up to 100%. I fixed their redundant ISP lines and network equipment. I offsided the mail to make it more reliable, dozens of improvements, and everyone was pretty happy. All brokers and employees loved the improvements. Then the partners started doing really sketchy stuff. And at this point, I really realized who it is I was dealing with and how sketchy these people truly can be. These people eventually had me open employee exchange mailboxes and run mail queries on email addresses. And it turns out the emails were from a lawyer email between the lawyer and their client, who was one of the employees. They had me do this all the time for anyone. I would have to collect it all, and then they would fire them and keep their clients. It is illegal in the brokerage firm to look at them, and I didn't know that at the time. They somehow convinced a lending company to merge with them, and this was a totally different crew. They were nice, honest, real customer focused. I made friends with one of the lending agents, and he helped me search for houses on his MLS account on lunch. The nicest guy ever. His wife and her dad ran the firm until the merger. Eventually, after many different events, I found out the plan they had in action was to simply fire everyone from the firm and just steal the name and the client list. And they had only been there for a few months, so just long enough to learn their business. I also found out they were going to fire me now that everything was more reliable. And do you want to know how I found out? Well, I saw it in an email. During one of the email queries, one of the partners had me do to another partner. So the only nice people at this awful place were getting locked out of their office over the weekend. And I was now getting fired, now that I had essentially made myself redundant. Well, in their mind at least. Now, before I go any further, let me tell you about the red folder. The red folder was locked in my file cabinet. It contained every password for administration access to every system. It also contained maintain the fire plan or downtime plan for every system in the company. My boss didn't really understand why we needed one, and he never really looked at it. Well, I called my friend who worked for the lending firm, and I told him to head to the office and grab all the files and computers, as they did technically belong to them anyways. I told them the plan about changing the locks over the weekend. I told them that I was quitting and not to mention me. He said he understood, and then he thanked me. I changed the only other admin password that my boss had access to, and then I shredded the red folder. After all was said and done, I emailed my resignation. Well, as you can probably guess, they begged me to come back. They offered me a 30% pay bump. They said they were shocked I was so disloyal. Well, fast forward, and I heard years later from a secretary that worked there at the time that it took them 4 months to get all systems under control again. They had to use a contractor they relied on before, and I heard it cost them a year of my salary. And honestly, that's exactly what they get after all the sketchy stuff they had me do, as well as their plan to fire me and the rest of the firm. Wow, that is honestly some awesome revenge. I mean, the stage was set perfectly. You're not only the only person in there that handles the IT of this company, but you're also one of the people that can bring it under for several months at a time. I mean, you brought that place to a screeching halt for literally 4 months, and that's all because you got rid of the red folder and because you changed some passwords. That is honestly hilarious to me. And those people you were working for, they did not sound like good people at all. They were clearly doing stuff that was really sketchy, and I don't blame you for getting out of there on your terms. So good for you for getting your revenge, because these people clearly had ill intentions. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my wife it's time for her to go back to work, especially since I'm currently running on 12 to 18 hours of work every single day? Here's what happened. My wife has been out of work since 2018. She had a mental breakdown during her 5th year of teaching, and she's been going to therapy ever since, and we started marriage counseling during COVID. The reason for marriage counseling was because she thought I was pushing her too hard to go back to work before her and her therapist thought that she was ready. I tried to explain many times that was not my intent, but realistically speaking, for me to keep up with expenses and retirement contributions, I pretty much have to take on extra shifts, which sometimes clock in at over 18 hours a day, and on average, I've been pulling about 84 hours a week, and I've been doing this since she stopped working. We recently had a fight because I had an extremely rough week and had the conversation again about her going back to work. She opened up with the same line she always does. She said, "We do not feel it is the right time yet. She feels I have made great progress, and if I rush it, I run the risk of losing it." The we being her and her therapist. I told her I really do not care what her therapist has to say, and I am honestly sick of her hiding behind her words whenever this topic comes up. She then started to cry, telling me that she does not like being this way either, and that I'm belittling her due to the suffering from her mental health issues. So I replied by saying that I do not intend to belittle you or not take your issues seriously, but the problem is that I'm running myself ragged. And what happens if I have a mental break? Do you think I have the luxury of not working? No, I'm just gonna have to push through my demons. She said her therapist warned her that this would happen sooner or later, and that I would try to manipulate her into doing something she was not ready to do. This is when I really lost it and just let it all out. I did not say anything kind. I told her she insults me for thinking what I'm doing is manipulation. I told her I'm working these extra shifts so that she can be at home and just playing games and all this other garbage. I told her that during this entire time, you have not even made an effort to improve on certain skills. I told her she can still not cook to save her life, and that I was sick of coming home after 12 or 18-hour days just to make us dinner because her idea of making dinner is something pre-made in the oven or even just ordering out. Now, after I said that, among other things, she stormed out of the house crying and yelling and shouting how I'm a complete jerk and how I would rather see myself comfortable versus her getting better. So here I am. I do not feel at the core that I'm wrong, and while what I said was harsh, I think it did have to be said. So am I the jerk for telling my wife it's time for her to go back to work? What should I do? Honestly, I don't think you're the jerk here. You have literally been waiting around since 2018, and in my opinion, that is a lot of time to sit there and try and figure things out. Sure, she's going to a therapist, but clearly this therapist kind of sucks. Like, they're obviously not helping her get better in the slightest. Like, it's been several years at this point, and the therapist hasn't made any kind of improvement in this person's life. Like, maybe it's time to find another another therapist because clearly they're not doing their job. And it really seems like the therapist and your wife are only thinking about her mental health. This guy is pulling 12 to 18-hour shifts and is basically forced to work 12 to 18 hours a week just to make ends meet. So I can completely understand why you would be upset as to why nothing's getting done in her life in the slightest. Like literally, you've done everything you can to try and figure your life out. You've been accommodating. And honestly, after year 3, I would have been like, okay, we gotta get something going. But you've dealt with this for 5+ years. I think I would have lost my mind at that point if I had to deal with that. So I can completely understand why you would be so frustrated with the distinct lack of progress from your wife. So hopefully this all works out for you, because it doesn't sound like your wife has a very good therapist if it's literally taking them years to find any kind of progress. We're talking like half a decade. That is ridiculous, and honestly, nobody needs to deal with that. And hopefully a solution comes together sooner than later. An entitled Karen gets mad at me about getting a free sandwich in her bag at our restaurant. And I'm honestly so sick of Karens like this, it's honestly exhausting. So this happened a few years back in my old place of employment, but sometimes it just resurfaces in my head and makes me laugh uncontrollably. I used to work in food service as a manager for nearly a decade, so I have a mountain of entitled Karen stories. This is nowhere near the worst Karen I've had to deal with, but I would like to think that she was by far one of my favorites despite being relatively mild. She wasn't outright rude, but incredibly condescending. Now, this was during the pandemic, so while we were already incredibly short-staffed, we were also training new staff. So, having a lack of experienced staff, mistakes are bound to happen. Our dining room had just opened back up to full service rather than just takeout, so it was added chaos on top of that. That day, I was already stretched thin by trying to get the new hires up to speed, by taking up orders and trying to help the drive-thru coordinator. She wasn't new, but it wasn't a spot she was in often. While being an easy spot, it is a fast-paced spot. At a point where I wasn't over there to help out, she had accidentally slipped a sandwich for a different order into the bag for a customer she was helping at the window. She recognized the mistake afterwards, and the sandwich maker had to remake it. No big deal, it happens. I asked if the customer only got the wrong order or got their food as well, and she confirmed that she slipped in an extra sandwich by mistake, but still received the rest of her order correctly. As long as everyone receives what they pay for, it's fine. Free food isn't something to complain about, so long as your order is otherwise correct. Well, or so you would think. So when people called the store, I always made a mental note of the caller ID. I did this because of repeat offenders, meaning the people who always had a problem. Prank callers also were a problem, and we just had to figure out who they were and then hide their numbers. So when the phone rang, I read the name and answered it. I said to them, "Thank you for calling, how can I help you?" And on the other end of the line was the entitled Karen of this story, and boy was she not happy. She said to me, "Yeah, I need a manager right now." I said to them, "Yes, I'm the manager, how can I help?" She said, "I got a sandwich I didn't order in my bag." Now, me realizing this was the situation from before, I said to her, "Oh yes, we're so sorry about that. We accidentally slipped an extra sandwich in your bag. You can keep it." This entitled Karen then starts to scream that she didn't ask for this sandwich. So I went ahead and I apologized again. I said to her, "Well, was everything else in your bag correct? Or was there anything else missing?" The Karen says, "I got everything else, just a sandwich I didn't ask for." So I explained to her again. I say, "Yes, we had a mix-up at the window and added someone else's sandwich by mistake. You weren't charged for that sandwich. Mistakes happen, I apologize." The entitled Karen says, "I know, I have the receipt. I'm not complaining about the free sandwich," despite the fact that the sandwich is why she was calling. So I ask her and I say, "Okay, is there something else that's going on?" This entitled Karen then has the gall to insult us. She says, "Yes, I just wanted to tell you guys that you do not know what you're doing. And if I had the corporate number, I would call them and file a complaint." Now, I loved when people threaten to call corporate, because corporate doesn't actually intervene. They just escalate the issue directly back to the store to deal with either the assistant manager or the manager. Since their beef was with the store, it was better for it to be resolved at the store level, rather than having some big wig who's never even touched a fryer. It always ended up as a slap in the face to the Karen, and it was a massive waste of time. So I said to the Karen, "Well, I'd be more than happy to give you the number to corporate if you want." This Karen, after a long pause, says, "No, I'm not gonna waste my time. You guys have no clue what you're doing. Just know that I will not be coming back." So I said to her, "Perfect, have a nice day." She then hung up and I went back to doing what I was doing. About an hour later, the phone rings. It's her name on caller ID. I answer the phone and I say, "Thank you for calling, how can I help you?" This entitled Karen then said, "Hi, I was there for a pickup order about an hour ago and my ground beef was missing. So I was wondering if you didn't have it in stock, or maybe you forgot about it. Me, realizing her beef wasn't with us this time, I said to her, "Ma'am, who are you trying to call?" This entitled Karen then rattles off a grocery store in a very loud, extremely condescending tone while spacing out every syllable. Now, me mocking her tone, I spaced out all of my syllables and I told her, "This is the restaurant you called earlier." She then called me a very inappropriate name and hung up immediately. I later took one more call that day from a much more vile Karen and decided, you know what? I think I'm done answering phone calls for the day. Wow, that Karen's not just a giant Karen, she's also a massive loser. Like, is this how she spends her day? Going around complaining about stuff instead of actually having a life and doing something with her life? Like, she not only complains to you guys for getting the wrong order, even though her order was correct and she had an extra sandwich, but then she tries to complain to the grocery store as if they don't know what they're doing. And you can bet she probably does this everywhere she goes. She probably complains at every stop along her way during the day just to try and get what she wants, as well as to basically make everybody's life miserable. Like, that's not fair, and nobody in customer service deserves to be treated that way. Like, this lady clearly just does not have it together, and she clearly has like no friends. So hopefully this lady learns her lesson to not act like that, because honestly, you're not going to get anywhere treating people like that, and it only convinces people further that you are an absolute jerk. Am I the jerk for threatening to kick my stepdaughter out of my house unless she apologizes to my daughter? Here's what happened. I first want to start off by saying that all the names in this story are fake. I have a daughter by the name of Nina who's 12 years old, and I also have a stepdaughter by the name of Kelly who's 16 years old. And my wife and I, my wife's name is Anna, have a child together. But this story is about Nina and Kelly. I met my wife when Kelly was 5 years old, and within a year, she and Kelly moved in with me. The house we live in has been in my family for generations and passed on to me when I was really young. I have also made some renovations there. It's a 4-bedroom house with 4 bathrooms, so each girl has her own room and an in-suite, which is especially helpful with Kelly due to how long she takes to put on her makeup. This has started about a month ago when Nina would come home crying due to bullying at her school. Me and Anna spend ages trying to get the school to do something and find out where the bullying is coming from. It all came to a conclusion a week ago when we found out it was Kelly who was spreading the rumors about Nina. I was absolutely furious, and I confronted her about it, as some rumors were based on Nina not having a mom, who did pass away during childbirth. Now, Kelly didn't take the confrontation well. She accused me of favoring Nina simply because Nina had a bigger bedroom but a smaller bathroom, and Kelly wanted more space. I said I'm not going to move Nina out of her room after all these years, and Kelly has already declined to swap with us as she doesn't want to share her bathroom with anyone, including our 6-year-old child. I have told Kelly that she must apologize to Nina as some of the things she said were vile and not deserved, and told her she will be grounded as she still behaved like Nina's friend while spreading those rumors behind her back. Kelly threw a fit and claimed Nina is a threat to her and her reputation, but I stayed firm as I don't see how a 12-year-old can be a threat to a high schooler. As Kelly started to say more vile things about Nina and our 6-year-old, I then told her that she has 48 hours to pick her belongings up and I will drop her off at her dad's house, where she will have to share a room and a bathroom with her other half-siblings. Kelly and Anna are both annoyed at me over this and have called me a jerk. Anna, my wife, then said I have no right to parent Kelly, but she is in my home and her behavior towards my daughters is not acceptable. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Before we go any further, the original poster actually has an update to this story. Here's what they had to say. So I have spoken to Anna about what Kelly said about Nina and our 6-year-old, and have also shown her this post online. Anna has apologized for brushing it off. She said that Kelly didn't tell her most of the story and blamed others on the rumors, and she didn't realize the extent of it. She will be having a conversation with Kelly and Kelly's dad tomorrow, as this behavior is not acceptable or appropriate. To put it lightly, she is horrified of all the comments made by her about both girls and finds it vile. She is also shocked that Kelly made them in the first place. Now, to address any concerns, having Kelly go and live with her father is a temporary solution and never intended to be permanent, especially if she changes her ways. It was more to separate her from Nina and the 6-year-old to make sure no more damage is done while we are not watching. If the roles were reversed and it was Nina who was at fault, I would have sent her to her grandparents to sort out the next move. I have seen a lot of suggestions about therapy, and Anna said she will look into it as soon as she has a chat with Kelly, as she wants to know what caused a sudden change. Now, I'm not cutting Kelly out of my will unless she carries on displaying such anger towards her sister. sisters. Nina is having a few days off from school, and I will be taking her out to the zoo and spending some father-daughter time together. My wife and I also will be taking our 6-year-old to see some cartoons this weekend and take her to her favorite cafe. Wow, that is a crazy situation. It's really good to see that the wife in this situation came around and saw exactly how vile and toxic Kelly was being. Like, really, that's inappropriate. First and foremost, I also want to say, and it doesn't seem like it was addressed, but the stepfather in this situation absolutely has every right to parent Kelly. To say otherwise would literally be so ridiculous, because this guy is clearly a father figure to Kelly, even if it's just a stepfather role. So to turn around and literally claim that they have no right to parent Kelly is, in my opinion, so disrespectful and so unbelievably toxic, especially when you consider this guy has been in this kid's life for a long time. So hopefully all of this works out, because the way your stepdaughter's acting is incredibly inappropriate, and there's no reason for this kind of behavior in the slightest. An entitled Karen tries to take my child from me, claiming that I'm too young to have a child and that she's gonna call the cops, assuming that I stole this kid from somebody else. And I'm so blown away by this interaction, and now I seriously don't know what to do. So I'm a 20-year-old female with a 3-month-old son, and we took our son to the park for the first time. They have swings that are good for little babies, so we had him in there, and he absolutely loved it. There was an older lady there with 3 kids. I'm assuming her grandchildren because they were pretty young, and she seemed like my grandma's age. Now, she was eyeing us up since the moment we got there. My fiance is a smoker, and he's not allowed anywhere near the baby while smoking, so he went to the baseball fields to sit and smoke. This is a decent ways away too, by the way. Even though this is a very, very small town, I didn't know this woman, as we didn't live in the town that we are currently at. We live in the biggest town in the county, but apparently the county's park didn't have any swings, even though it's huge. But I was very familiar with this town, as I lived here for many years when I was younger. So he was fine with leaving us alone, just not familiar enough to know the people anymore. My step-grandparents also lived here, so I felt comfortable for the most part. After my fiance had went over to the ballpark, this entitled Karen approached me and began talking to me. She asked me how I like babysitting, and when I said that, I just laughed at her and told her I wasn't babysitting and that this was my son. And when I said this to her, this set her off. She grabbed a hold of my wrist and told me don't lie to her, stating that I'm too young for this to be my son and that she doesn't believe me. She told me if I don't produce valid forms of identification for the both of us, she would call the police for kidnapping. So here's the issue with that. I don't carry my wallet on me that often, and the only forms of identification I have from my son is his insurance card. And this is because his social security card and birth certificate have not yet come in due to everything at the time being bogged down by the virus. I told the lady that, and she turned in her grip in my wrist, stating that that's a lie because they give you documents at the hospital. Well, they definitely didn't do that in my case. Now, what happened next absolutely blew my mind, as this escalated to the point where she shoves me down and tries to grab my son, stating that she will be keeping a hold of him until the cops arrived. When this happened, I quickly got up and grabbed my son from her. I didn't punch her, but I did sort of palm her nose, which I guess I did harder than I meant to, as it did cause some damage. She yelled at me that she was going to press charges for assault. My fiance was making his way back during this time and caught the tail end of the confrontation. Skipping ahead to when the cops show, they are talking to each of us, but the old lady won't stop screeching, so they take her further away so we can talk. Now, at this point, I am completely in fight mode and I'm terrified. I'm frantically explaining that I don't have ID, but this is my son. We just came here to the park to play. If there was any way I could prove I was the mother of my son, I showed him a photo of my C-section, of him literally getting pulled from me, and him on my chest a few hours later. Obviously, he looks different now, but you can tell it's the same baby. We were allowed to go home, and we were told we'd be hearing from someone about the assault and charges against the woman. This is all so crazy, and it happened so fast. Before we go any further, the original poster has some updates to this story. Here's what they had to say. We set up an appointment with a lawyer for this Monday, and I will be going to the police station later today. We called ahead and made an appointment for 3 o'clock. Now, when it comes to if the park had any cameras, I was pretty sure they didn't, as it's a very small area, but I called anyways, and it turns out they actually did. They agreed to send a copy of the footage to me, but they only have a couple, so I'm not sure if what happened was caught on tape, as the cameras are near the pavilion and the swings are off to the side. I know I should have reacted better, but I was in such shock and it happened so fast. But hopefully hopefully all of this will move on quickly and I can move on with my life. Wow, what an awful situation. Seriously, I can't imagine being in her shoes. Here you are just trying to enjoy the park, and then someone comes around and literally tries to take your child. Like, that is honestly insane. How can someone honestly do that and think that that's okay? The original poster actually has more to say about this, and not only did the cameras in the park not pick up any of this interaction, but apparently the original poster got charged with assault, and the charges against the old lady were dropped. And that is honestly so awful. That entitled old lady, in my opinion, got off easy. And you know what? If I was in the original poster's shoes, I would have palmed that lady in the face as well, if not escalated this a little bit further, if they seriously think I'm gonna let them take my kid. They currently are trying to get this appealed, so hopefully something good comes out of this. Because in my opinion, you did nothing wrong. You were protecting your child, and in my opinion, you did absolutely nothing wrong. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for throwing my brother-in-law's vape away because he wouldn't listen to me? Here's what happened. So here's a bit of backstory. I just recently had a baby. My baby was a C-section baby and came out a whole month earlier than expected. My daughter was in ICU for 13 days before coming home. Before bringing my daughter home, the nurses told me that if she was to get sick within a month, she would have to be back in the hospital due to her undeveloped lungs. They also told me that she couldn't even be in the same house as a vapor or smoker, as it could make her severely sick, and there is a possibility that she would not survive. She has been home for 10 days now, and today my brother-in-law continued to vape in the house after telling him on multiple days and times to stop, as it could make her sick and possibly hurt my daughter. He literally just straight up said, "So I didn't ask for a baby to be in the house. In fact, I hope my vape does cause problems. I'm tired of her interfering with my life." I told him he could always go into his room and open the window with his door closed, but just not vape in the general area where everyone hangs out to see the baby. Well, I was making my daughter a bottle and I was feeding her when he vaped and purposefully vaped her way twice. I told him to stop, and it was the last time I was gonna tell him before ruining his vapes and not caring in the slightest how much he spent on it. Then, not even 5 minutes later, he tried doing it again. And this is right when I'm in the kitchen burping my daughter. After feeding my daughter, I saw his vape unattended, so I grabbed it and threw it outside and watched it smash into pieces on a tree. Later, he tried looking for it, and I told him that he shouldn't have been vaping in the house like I had asked him nicely on multiple occasions. I told him to look outside for the vape. He screamed when he finally found his vape outside, ruined and in pieces, and then came back inside and began yelling that I was a jerk. He said that he spent his last $50 for the next 2 weeks on this said vape, and that I had completely ruined it. I told him to start listening to the rules instead of trying to hurt my daughter, and if he can at least do that, this won't happen again. Also, keep in mind he is very entitled and acts like everyone in his life, including my husband, is his maid and should just do everything for him, like clean up his room and make his food, put his food on a plate and serve it to him, while also demanding that we should be buying him things with our own money and so much more. He also doesn't pay rent, and he shouldn't even have the vape in the first place anyways, as he is not even 21 years old yet. So honestly, what should I do? Before we go any further, the original poster has an update to their story. Here's what they had to say. So, since some people are confused, my brother-in-law does not get along with the rest of the family. This is mine and my husband's property and home, and my brother-in-law has nowhere else to go and goes to school in this district. My husband doesn't want his brother in the streets. Also, my husband's mother spoiled the entitled brother-in-law as he is the baby of her kids, so she gave him everything. He has demanded everything, even if it meant that she had to go into debt just to give him what he wanted. So anyways, last night my husband and his brother got into it severely. My husband didn't really get mad at first. They started off by talking about how my husband's work was. He was then told by my brother-in-law that I ruined his vape for no reason. Keep in mind, by the way, I was napping with the baby at the time, so my husband didn't know the extent of what was going on. Well, my husband said that I would never do that, as I was a vapor myself before our daughter came into the world. Then his brother demands that my husband buy him a new vape, and this is where it gets wild. My husband said no, and my brother-in-law then started to yell. He said, "I just wish your baby wasn't around anymore. That way I can at least have my brother back. It's not fair. You always always choose them over me. I thought family was supposed to come first, you jerk. My husband then yelled back and said, don't you dare say some garbage like that. They are my family. My daughter is my world. But I have to come home almost every night with my wife crying because she is worried about my daughter's health. I suggest that if you want to live here, you need to get off your butt and start working and learn to smoke outside and away from the family I am building for myself. And if you have a problem with my wife and my daughter, then you can leave my house. I'm not doing you any more favors going forward. You are on your own. Now, my brother-in-law was in shock and just stood there dumbfounded. He got really upset and left the house to go to his friend's place. My husband feels as though he needed to finally learn a lesson since their mother spoiled the kid rotten before he lived with us, as was said before. So far today, my daughter and I are snuggled up together while my husband is getting ready to go back to work again today. I was told by my husband that if he comes back home and causes me problems, I should give him a call and that he will come home as soon as possible and address the issue. Wow, your brother-in-law sounds absolutely awful. This guy is seriously blowing vape in your daughter's face. I mean, the nurse was really clear about this situation. Your daughter cannot be exposed to anything like that. Cigarette smoke, anything with vaping, all that stuff cannot go in her lungs. She is just a baby. She just barely got out of the hospital and she was barely born. And your brother-in-law is being the most selfish jerk on planet Earth. Like, seriously, think about what he's doing right now. He has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't want this baby around. And I use that term lightly because what he actually said was atrocious. It was seriously uncalled for and there was no good excuse for anything that he said. It honestly makes sense as to why the rest of the family on your brother's side don't really like your brother-in-law. He sounds like just this punk kid who clearly got everything he wanted in life and now is trying to use that as some kind of leverage in your home. Like he's spoiled rotten and he's trying to act like this baby as well as the original poster are some kind of deterrent to him having a brother again. Like he seriously was like, I can't believe you're choosing them over me. Like, what, are you crazy? Of course he's choosing his daughter and his wife. He made a serious commitment when he got married. He's not just gonna turn his back on them and be like, you're right, you can vape all the time whenever you want. Like, that's seriously insane and there's no excuse for that. So no, you are not the jerk. I would have thrown his bags and all of his belongings out the door as well, not just the vape if that was me. So hopefully something can change in your living situation because this guy does not sound like a good person. And honestly, you deserve way better for you as well as for your infant daughter. Am I the jerk for not babysitting my wife after she got super drunk? Here's what happened. So my wife and I were on vacation in a foreign city. We met up with some friends, went out to dinner, and then hit the bars. And I got fairly tipsy, even borderline drunk. Out of nowhere, my wife decides it's time to go all out and informs me that it's her turn to get drunk. The problem was, I'm already tipsy and drunk myself. Then she just straight up disappears. We send a female from the group into the bathroom to find her, but nope, my wife just vanished to the bar and proceeded to down 12 shots of Fireball whiskey as well as some flavored vodka. Yeah, you can imagine how that went down. She pukes all over the place, pukes again on the street, and drunk me is kind of all on my lonesome as our friends are all trashed as well. Somehow, I managed to navigate both of us back to the hotel on foot, mind you. I get her into the shower to clean off all the vomit, and she says she's okay. And then I flop onto the bed and pass out almost immediately. Now, all seems well until about 2 o'clock in the morning rolls around, and the hotel phone starts blaring. As I'm groggily trying to figure out what's happening, I get out of bed and I realize my feet are literally wading in water on the carpet. There is 2 inches of water on the carpet. She passed out in the shower, not the bathtub, but the shower only, and her body was perfectly blocking the drain in the floor. It ended up flooding our entire hotel room and leaking out into the hallway and into somebody else's room, who presumably called the hotel staff. We managed to get ourselves dressed, hotel staff comes up to talk to us, and we're shuffled to a new room without a watery carpet. There were no real consequences, and we were not charged for any fees. But here's the crux of the issue. My wife turns around and blames me for this entire circus. According to her, I apparently should have been more attentive and made sure she got out of the shower. I mean, she did say she was okay, and at that point, she did sound coherent. I mean, to be honest, I was drunk as well. Now, I guess I would get this if she didn't spring this on me after it was too late for me to not drink. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, I don't think this is totally your fault. Your wife made a terrible decision and is now trying to blame that on you. Like, seriously, you need to be really brave if you want to try and get trashed in another country when everybody else in your party who could take care of you is also trash themselves. Like, that is sketchy, that is not okay, and something really bad could have happened. And it also doesn't help that you also were kind of tipsy. Not to the point that your wife was at, but still, you were not really in a place to watch over her and try and babysit her. So the fact that she's trying to blame this on you, in my opinion, is really unfair. She made the decision to get completely wasted, not you. I mean, if she really wanted to drink for the rest of the night, she could have at least informed you first, so you could abstain from drinking and try and at least be her chaperone of some kind. So in my opinion, the timing just seems really bad. It seems like she jumped to the conclusion that this is somehow your fault, despite the fact that she's the one that decided to get completely wasted. I don't think that's your fault, and I also don't think it's anybody's fault that the room got flooded when she passed out in the shower. It kind of seems like everybody in this situation didn't really have a full grasp on what was happening because everybody was wasted and needed to rest. So no, I don't think you're the jerk. I think some really bad decisions were made, and it seems like your wife is trying to blame you instead of simply just trying to own up and take responsibility. I was fired earlier in my career by 2 senior people I reported to, but after several years, I finally got my revenge on them by playing a major role in practically torpedoing their career, and I've never felt better about finally getting revenge. Here's what happened. When I was in my early 20s trying to make it in the world and just starting out, I reported to a senior sales team as a junior salesperson. Really, it was a support role, and I knew my place. I was to watch, stay quiet, learn, and help them. I report to a lady who was mid-level and the senior guy who was head of sales. I was green, and while I was seeking mentorship and periodically asking for advice to improve how I was supporting them, they mistook that as incompetence. It was simple things like learning what format each of them preferred their daily reports in and what tasks they had to do. I also had an issue because the senior guy basically stole my first bonus at the 3-month mark. It was a tiny amount of money for him, but it was certainly a lot of money for my young self. I didn't officially complain, but asked him about how he was able to keep my bonus when it was obvious it tracked back to my efforts on the data. He didn't like that and didn't pay me. I was doing a good job. I'm fully aware of my skills, but with the explanation of them saying, it's just not working out, they fired me a few weeks later. I spent a couple of months getting a new job, which turned out to be an amazing smaller firm where I was appreciated, mentored correctly, and thrived. The new firm was very successful. About 2 years later, after I'd become a vital but still junior part of the smaller company, my former firm closed up in the region and put everybody out of work. So I saw through the glass while walking by the boardroom one day that the senior guy who stole my bonus was being interviewed for a job at my current firm. My current superiors didn't see me walk by, but my old boss and I made eye contact. Now, in a small sales team at a small firm, it's important to have a nice working relationship as well as having a lot of trust. It's also a lot of selfish salespeople who are there to make money and don't like being ripped off. So later that afternoon, I quietly mentioned to the boss about how I noticed they were interviewing this specific person in the office today when I was walking by. I then said to him, I used to work for that jerk and he stole my bonus one time. And you know what? It was all I needed to say, because the last thing my current boss needed was a person who'd do that to our team. Eventually, times got tough, and I know that man spent 2 years looking for work. 6 or 7 years later, I was at a new company in a more senior role, and the one lady who I originally reported to called me up and was selling at a new firm, and she was calling to see if I would be interested in purchasing from her. Now, I didn't know she had started working there. The firm she was with was selling something that was very basic and interchangeable to competing firms. She had gone from selling important things to selling a nothing product after the original firm had closed. She acted all happy and nice to me, and then she recalled the great job I did when we worked together. I also know she didn't want to be talking to me, but her call log said that she had to call. I told her thanks, and then she sends me along an official quote and proposal. And this proposal and quote, by the way, is after several hours of work on her part. Now, in the industry we're in, she was paid not only on new sales, but also for net sales measurements, meaning she had to retain clients as well as bring in new ones. Now, I had a lot of commitment at the firm she was now at. While she spent her afternoon drafting a proposal, I spent a couple of hours pulling all my business from that company and substituting it for a competitor up the street. She emailed me a full business proposal and mentioned that she was excited to be working with me again, and that she was excited to be supporting my business. She had no idea yet, but I had just pulled out everything, and she would never receive a bonus this year because of the size of the amount I pulled out. The next day, she emailed me quite upset and had CC'd her boss, who I'd known for years and had a good working relationship with. I replied to all and I thanked her and said I decided to go with a competitor simply because it just won't work out, as I find her approach to business dealings to be completely insincere. Her boss emailed me back directly and asked what happened, and I replied that I just don't think that she is a sincere person. My business to their firm was worth more than her job, and she didn't last more than a month there after all that I did. Honestly, this is some crazy awesome revenge. Like seriously, this guy got burned almost a decade ago, and he did not forget the way these people treated him. They blatantly undervalued him, they didn't appreciate all the hard work that he put in, and to top it all off, they stole from him. And that is unacceptable. The original poster absolutely deserved that bonus. That guy had no right to take it, and his other boss had no reason to call him incompetent. So truly good for the original poster for getting some awesome revenge. It's not very often you get to put people in their place and basically torpedo their career, all because they seriously burned you earlier in your career. So honestly, this story shows that you need to be careful on how you treat people on your way up, because you might meet them again on your way back down. My entitled manager treats me and the rest of the store like absolute garbage, mocking us and belittling us any chance he gets, as well as being super strict about everything at the store. So me and my coworkers decide to get revenge, setting him up for failure right as corporate is coming to visit our restaurant. And I've never been happier to see somebody get taken down in my life. Here's what happened. Entirely too many years ago, I started to work at a fast food company. Let's call it Southern State Not Baked Poultry. Now, this place wasn't a bad first job. I was only 16 at the time, and the assistant manager at that location was my best friend's stepdad. So we took what was tedious and menial and tried to make it fun. He was actually a really good manager and genuinely cared about the people who worked for him. We would do silly stuff before the store opened while we were doing prep. He would have been playing music loudly from his office, and that's as long as everything got done and it was done well. He really didn't care if we had fun doing it. We'll call him Larry. And also, for the sake of this story, every name is fake. But this story is not about Larry. This story is about the store manager itself. We'll call him Tim. Tim was the exact opposite of our assistant manager. Everything had to be taken seriously. Fun was completely outlawed. I genuinely hated working with Tim. Tim was an egocentric, power-hungry, petty little man with delusions of grandeur because he was a store manager for Southern State Not Baked Poultry. Tim's approach to managing the restaurant was to work the employees until they burned out, and when they did, he would fire them and hire someone else. Needless to say, morale when Tim worked was in the garbage. Tim hated that crews would prefer working with Larry instead of him. He hated that crews had fun when Larry was working. He hated that our store's numbers were always better when Larry worked. Mostly, he just hated everyone. But one thing that he absolutely hated was a silly little thing that Larry did. If it was before the restaurant opened, he would stick his tongue between his teeth and lower lip and shout out an employee's name right as they walk into the store. It sounded absolutely ridiculous. I would always do the same thing back, which ended up sounding like some weird imitation of what Larry was doing. Now, a perfect example of what an absolute jerk Tim was involved this young woman. And this lady, who, due to a variety of stressors, attempted to unalive herself after a particularly grueling shift after working with Tim. After she had recovered, she came back for her last paycheck, and Larry was also working, which is not a coincidence. She called the store to find out what day he was working. So Larry sat her down out in the lobby, brought her lunch, brought her last checkout, and sat and talked with her for about an hour. It was after the lunch rush and he had the time, so he made sure that she was doing okay, talked about whatever she wanted to talk about, and by the time she left, she was smiling, but had tears on her cheeks. She had never had someone just sit and listen, and just let her talk out everything that was going on. But what Tim did next was absolutely unbelievable, and I seriously can't believe the way he acted. The very next day, Tim had come in and hauled Larry into the office. He says to Larry, "The next time the unalive queen comes in, tell her to do it right next time." So hopefully by now you have a clear picture of exactly how petty and vindictive this little man was. And this is right about when the revenge starts to take place. We were scheduled to have the regional and national bigwigs for Southern State Not Baked Poultry come through our area for an annual inspection. Tim had his eyes set on being one of those bigwigs, at least for the region. I mean, why wouldn't he be? He did everything by the book. That automatically made him a good manager, at least in his eyes. Everything had a checklist and a procedure, and a set of written instructions in the book, and if you couldn't meet the expectations set forth in this book, well, Tim would then yell at you and berate you, because that's how a manager is supposed to manage according to Tim. Well, before the bigwigs got to our store and we knew what day they would be coming, several of us had agreed that on the day they came through, we would all screw up just enough just to get Tim to blow his cool. Because our regional manager and the national bigwigs all believed that Southern State Not Big Poultry was a family company and that employees were valuable team members. The day in question arrived and the bigwigs were there for their big tour. And that's when all the problems started to arise. It started with one of the fryers not having the oil replaced last night. Then the shaker table hadn't been cleaned. Or maybe there was way too much cold slaw made up and we won't get through it before we have to toss it. You get the picture. After the second time I took a minute too long to get a basket of poultry into the cooker, Tim absolutely lost his mind. He started yelling, cursing, throwing things. He actually physically pushed me away from the breading station. And this is right in the middle of the lunch rush, all while the regional and national bigwigs stood there watching. And we were already several lines of people deep in both cash registers, with a lobby full of people eating and watching. Tim stood there gulping like a fish. His mouth was moving like he was trying to say something, but no sounds were coming out. The room was absolutely quiet other than the beeping of a fryer that was done. I looked at Tim, and this was the moment we had all been gearing up for. I looked down at where he had pushed me, and a set of handprints and flour were on my chest. And so I then cut loose with him. I yelled at him that I quit, took off my apron, and threw it at him. I told him I was tired of the way he was treating me, as well as his poor management, and how he single-handedly drove morale through the floor every time he walked through the doors. How he was an awful excuse for a manager, and that if he didn't have Larry and a good couple of shift leads, he would have driven the location out of business a long time ago. All the color drained from his face, and then he bolted for his office. The national and regional folks ended up comping everyone's meals that were in the restaurant that day. Interestingly enough, Tim was not fired, but he was demoted, and in exchange, Larry was promoted to manager. About 10 years later, I was working at my current job as an EMT. We had just dropped off a patient at the hospital that was across the street from the same restaurant, and my partner was hungry, so we drove across the street and pulled in. Now, I had not set foot in that restaurant since the day I had quit, but lo and behold, who is working the counter but Tim himself? And his name tag still shows that he's an assistant manager. The restaurant was empty since it was between lunch and dinner time, and I just couldn't help myself. I stuck my tongue between my teeth and lower lip, and I said as loud as I could Tim's name, just to straight up mock him. I haven't been back since, and that was around 12 years ago, but I'm willing to bet that he is still just the assistant manager. Wow, that manager was absolutely awful. I mean, seriously, he did not know what he was doing. Like the fact that this guy would yell at his coworkers, and by the way, yes, they are your coworkers. They're not your underlings that you can just boss around and scream at. The fact that he would act that way is so unacceptable. That is not how you lead a store or anything in general. Instead, he should have been more like Larry. Larry had everything together, and he absolutely deserved to be the store manager. This Tim guy was just a complete joke. And honestly, the way you guys set him up like that was so amazing. He absolutely deserved that, especially after the way he talked about your female coworker who was clearly having some kind of mental health crisis. Like that guy had no business talking about her like that. That was so out of line, it's not even funny. So good for you for getting him demoted, as well as showing to the regional and the national bigwigs that this guy has no business being a manager. And I think the original poster's right. I bet after all these years, he is most likely still just the assistant manager. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my coworker that her husband's insecurities are not my concern? Here's what happened. Roughly a week ago, I was sent on a 3-day business trip with a coworker across the country. My coworker's name for the sake of the story will be Sarah. Sarah is not her real name. Sarah and I are really good friends and work very closely. Also, since it was our area of expertise, it made the most sense for our company to send us. Sarah's husband, by the name of John, that's also not his real name, also works for the company. Long story short, John doesn't like me at all. Personally, I think he's a bit prejudiced and insecure, as he didn't mind me at all while our company was working virtually during COVID. But once we met in person, his opinion changed. Since then, there has been a pretty noticeable sense of rivalry between us. Furthermore, Sarah has mentioned previously that he doesn't like how closely we work together and how friendly I am with her. The business trip was both successful and fun. We finished most of our work obligations on the first 2 days of the trip, so we spent most of the third day having some fun and enjoying the city. John texted Sarah pretty often, asking what we were up to, which was a bit obnoxious. obnoxious. At some point, I asked her to respond less often, and that did get him to stop asking so many questions. Since we got back, Sarah has been telling me that John is acting strangely. Yesterday evening, he told her how uncomfortable the trip made him feel. She went on to tell me that it wasn't just the trip, but also how close he thinks we are, and how often we text and joke around with each other. I felt annoyed that John seemingly wanted to exert some control over my life, so I told Sarah that his concerns and insecurities are not my problem. She said that I was being too unsympathetic towards him and that I needed to be more patient with him. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, I can kind of see this both ways. First and foremost, I don't like the fact that you were telling her, hey, stop texting John so often. Like, that seems really sketchy in my opinion. That should have really been a moment of self-reflection that, yeah, maybe I'm crossing a line here. I can understand that maybe the text messaging was getting annoying, but overall, that is seriously not okay, and I don't think that was a good thing to do. But on the other hand, I do think you're right. The husband's insecurities are his own to deal with and not yours. But overall, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to take a step away from this friendship. Clearly, it's causing stress with Sarah and John, even if you're not meaning to have any kind of negative impact on their life. Because the truth is, you are. Clearly, there's tension with the fact that you're friends with Sarah, and I don't think it's appropriate to continue having this friendship in the way that you've been going about doing it. So hopefully this can work out, because I don't think this is a good friendship to be pursuing, and at the end of the day, I think it might be time for the both of you to just become colleagues, because this friendship is clearly causing problems with everybody involved. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for telling my boss to let me feel my emotions for once after I broke down and started crying at work? Here's what happened. I'm a 27-year-old female and I was a cashier in a grocery shop in my town. I did every shift I could possibly do. I stayed later and came in earlier to help my coworkers when someone wouldn't come into work because they simply didn't feel like working. Now, for some context before going into the story, I have to tell you one of my hardest challenges I faced was when I was a teenager. I never knew my biological father. The man that I call Dad is the man that has been with my mom since I was 5 years old. He passed away when I was 15 due to esophagus cancer, and I never really healed from that loss. And it's even been 12 years later. My mother met another man who also lost his wife 2 months to the day after my dad passed away, and they ended up being a big help to each other. My now stepfather and I are very close, and I can't see my future without him. One day, I got a call from my mom when I was at my lunch break. My stepfather just had a VCA and is going to the hospital at the same moment. When I hung up, I just burst into crying. My whole world crashed before me, and I was worried I was going to lose another father figure in my life. I left work earlier that day and I waited for the news. My next shift for work was cut off in half, and I went to ask my boss why that was. I asked her if I could have a normal schedule, and she answered me and said, "So no more cries, okay?" I said to her, "Excuse me? My stepfather almost died, and all you have to tell me is that?" My manager then says, "Well, you put your coworkers in a bad situation that night." I looked at her and I said, "Can't you just let me feel my emotions? I'm not a robot, you know." She then said to me, "I don't care about your life. Next time, stay until when you have to leave." Now, at the time, I didn't have the guts to give her a really good petty answer. So honestly, I need to know, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, your boss sounds awful. First off, you are not the jerk. Your stepfather almost passed away. I think anybody would have started crying in a moment like that. That is so stressful, and it takes such a higher precedent than that stupid job. And by the way, that job sounds awful. The people you work for are absolutely heartless. They have no business talking to you like that. So not only do I hope your stepfather is doing okay and everything's recovered for him and all that other stuff, but also I really hope you find another job. This is not the kind of people you want to work for. And hopefully you're able to find something a lot better than this garbage. A medical facility sends me a check for $1,200 claiming that I overpaid them. But after trying to get to the bottom of this, as well as being treated horribly by their customer service management, I decided to deposit that check and cash it out. And I found it funny when they called me back, explaining that they had made a mistake and that they shouldn't have given me that money. Here's what happened. So this happened back in 2014. I had just lost my job and was in the process of looking for a new one, but didn't have any money saved to pay bills in the meantime. So I asked my father if I could borrow $1,200 just to get me through the next month, and I would pay him back as soon as I started working again. He sent the money, I paid my bills, and I got a new job shortly afterwards. As soon as I had the money to pay him back, I used my bank's online bill pay option to send him a check. I sent sent him a text, told him it was on the way, and just assumed that was the end of it. Well, a week went by and he had not gotten it. I thought maybe it took a few days for the bank to actually process the bill pay option because I had not used it before, so I asked him to just wait a few more days to see if it came in. Well, several days later and it still had not gotten there, so I called the bank and asked them and they told me I could do a stop payment on it for free, so I did just that. Then I just wrote a personal check and mailed it to him. I just assumed something went wrong with the online bill pay. About 2 months later, I got a check in the mail from a medical facility in the state my father lives in for $1,200. I called and asked them what it was about, and they told me on a recorded line that it was an overpayment on an account my father had with them, and it was a legitimate check and was mine to keep. Now, at that point, I didn't associate it with the bill pay thing I tried to do a couple of months before. I did call my father to ask about his accounts with this place because there's no reason they should have my address to be sending me an overpayment if he had actually made one. He had no idea what was going on because he had not used that facility in a few years. I looked up the place on Google and finally it dawned on me what had happened. My father's address was on Saddlewood Drive at this point in time, but when I typed it into bill pay, my phone auto-corrected it to Sandalwood, and it just happened to be the same numerical address. And because my father's name was listed as the payee, they erroneously attempted to apply it to his account. So that's where my check had gone. I tried to call them again and explain what happened, and the lady on the phone was extremely rude to me. She told me, "I've already talked to you about this. I don't know why you're calling again. We sent you what we owed you. This account is settled and we will not be talking about it again." Again, this is on a recorded line. I asked if she was sure they owed me this money, and she practically shouted yes. And at that point, I just smiled and hung up the phone. I deposited the check into my bank that day. They didn't try and call me back until 6 weeks later. I had been wondering how long it would take. The person who called me was a different lady, and she called to tell me that a mistake had been made and that I owed them $1,200. I told her that she was misinformed and she could go back and listen to the recorded calls that I had made to their office. Then I gave her the dates. I had been reassured multiple times that the money was mine and that I was in the clear to cash that check. Then I hung up the phone on these people. And you know what? Since then, I haven't heard a single thing about it. This story's great because it goes to show you that customer service goes both ways. The original poster was literally just trying to be honest. They were clearly trying to work something out that was an obvious discrepancy with this medical facility. They did not owe him $1,200. Literally, he was trying to figure it out and make sure that this was accurately accounted for. But the person on the other line who clearly doesn't like their job was not only rude with them, but also was incredibly condescending. Like, how ignorant do you have to be to act like that? It probably would have taken them just a few checks on their computer to accurately figure out if this money even should go to this guy. So you know what? I don't blame him for cashing that check. I would have done that immediately as well. If these people gave me the go-ahead and said, "Yes, this is yours. Stop calling us. Oh my goodness, why are you calling?" If they had done that, I would have been like, okay, let's do this. I'm gonna take that money and run, and there's nothing you can do about it. So truly good for the original poster. They got a sweet payday of $1,200, and at the end of the day, I'm willing to bet that the person who said, "Yes, you can have that money," probably got in a lot of trouble. And honestly, with the bad attitude that she had, she absolutely would have it coming. Am I the jerk for asking my wife for receipts for all purchases that she makes, just so I can verify that she's buying the right stuff? Here's what happened. I'm a 37-year-old male, and I have a wife who's 35, as well as a daughter who's 3 years old. I'm a doctor, and so is my wife, but she's from Belarus, and did her medical schooling in the United Kingdom, so she cannot work in the US without some complicated processes. Since I make enough money for both of us, we decided that she would be a stay-at-home mom. I let her use a credit card for household purchases, and previously never really scrutinized the receipts to see whether she was buying what she said she was buying. However, we do tend to keep receipts for a few months in case we need them as proof of purchase. Now, we had agreed that she would let me know before making purchases, and that was it, and that she would message me after the purchase with the item and the total cost. However, recently, we had to attend an event, and she needed some makeup products, so I told her to use the card for that. Now, usually she has sufficient leftover makeup from events, etc., and uses the leftovers if we go on dinner dates. However, recently, I noticed that she started using it when going out with her friends, which she previously would not do. I also noticed new products in the cabinet in the bathroom. I investigated the receipts and found out that on one of the grocery store trips, she had told me a higher amount than the cost of the groceries, and also bought cosmetic products. I showed it to her and she she cried and then got defensive, but agreed to not let it happen again. I told her to give me the receipts from now on and that it should go to me directly and I will check them with the online banking daily. She then got upset and says that I should trust her more. So am I the jerk here? If she said she would not do it again, I don't see why she should have a problem with it, since I will just be using my time for verifying. What should I do? The original poster in this story, in my opinion, is a massive jerk. Can you imagine training to be a doctor and then suddenly you're stuck as a stay-at-home mom and your overly controlling husband is trying to control what you can and cannot buy? Like, seriously, buddy, you need to back off. What you're doing is unbelievably inappropriate and you really need to check yourself. You're treating her like the IRS treats people when they audit them for tax fraud. She's just buying makeup. Is it really that big of a deal? Like, seriously, you're acting as if she's stealing money from you and trying to basically like scam you out of your money. If you are going to be the only one working in the family and you guys share that money together, well, congratulations, it's both of your money. It's not just your money that you're lending out to her. This is also your wife. Like, come on. How are you not okay with her buying makeup or literally anything? She should not have to show you receipts, especially if she's not doing anything wrong with the money. Like, come on. Like, you encouraged her to be a stay-at-home mom and share finances, and then you're gonna turn around and micromanage her like some kind of dictator? Like, that's awful. That is a horrible thing to do to your partner. So yes, you are definitely the jerk in this situation. You have no reason to act like that, and truly, you need to make this right by being better to your wife. My ex-girlfriend cheated on me with her cousin, so I got revenge by exposing her live to everybody in the family, ruining her reputation for life, while also exposing her for the cheater that she is. Here's what happened. So let's start this story by saying this happened 12 years ago. I'm now happily married with 3 children and I regret absolutely nothing. I was with my ex for 3 years. I had noticed that she was being extremely controlling. I was expected to give every little detail of my day and tell her my schedule in advance. And if I deviated from that, she would be very upset. She chalked it up to just bad feelings that she was having and shrugged it off as her paranoia for past relationships of infidelity. I had never once cheated or strayed, and I never gave her a reason to act like this. It became unbecoming of my fiance to act in such a way. Now, this is where things get a little bit juicy. After she had asked for my schedule to make plans, as mine tends to be a bit more hectic than hers, I noticed that she was texting someone. In my line of work, if I put in more than 40 hours, I have the ability to take time off at will as long as the work is completed at a later date. I was very good friends with her brother, and I still am. We laugh about this to this day, and he actively reminds her of it. I messaged him stating that I wanted to do something special for her a little bit earlier than our anniversary to make sure that it was a special surprise. They both worked in the same fabrication facility. He was a fabricator and she was a shipping manager. He was kind enough to let me know her schedule, and it's right about then the discrepancies fell into place. Without my knowledge, she was foregoing overtime. She worked 12-hour shifts Monday through Friday, with the exception of Wednesdays, when she would only work half a day. She had been taking Wednesdays off right around the time that she started getting extremely controlling. Lucky for me though, I had stacked several days of leisure time up, so taking Wednesday off for me was not an issue. A few days go by and Wednesday's here. I put on my work gear and I supposedly leave for work. I was expecting her to leave as our apartment complex had 2 exits on the same road and I could see directly across from the shopping center. So I parked my car near the back and I just waited. After about an hour, I noticed a very specific red Mustang with a specific decal on the back window. It was her cousin by marriage. I had also done my due diligence to take an old laptop, which we kept on our desk in an office area with a full view of the living room, bedroom door, and bathroom, plus the kitchen. I had set it up for remote access and had it alert me when the webcam noticed movement. Giving her the benefit of the doubt, I thought he may be dropping something off or coming over to help her out with something, as her family sometimes does that. But sure enough, a message came through, so I remote into the laptop. He walks through the door without skipping a beat. She unbuttons his shirt and begins kissing him. I created a URL link for the live stream, and as she was preoccupied, we had a family group text. They were both part of it, but at the current time, they were currently indisposed and didn't look at their phones. They didn't even wait. They could have gone to the bedroom, but no. They decided to spend some quality time together right there on the couch, if you know what I mean. So you know what I did? I sent the link off to the friend group chat and the family group chat. Within minutes, I'm getting calls nonstop from friends and family alike. There was no turning back. She was getting blown up, but she was ignoring her phone. Not until the 4th or 5th call came through did they decide to take a break? For context, the state I live in allows for recording of personal property regardless of occupancy. I was the only one on the lease. She wasn't allowed to be on the lease because of poor credit. The call she had picked up was from her cousin's mother, who she was currently spending quality time with. She answers the phone on speaker, and I kid you not, the first words out of his mother's mouth was that they should stop spending quality time together, if you know what I mean. They both went rigid, and she began to stutter over her words. She started to say, "What are you talking about?" and all this other stuff. The mother then divulged that there was a live feed of them sent out by me to her family. She grabbed every pillow off the couch and covered herself. The cousin staggered off, trying to put his pants and shoes on, just to trip himself up and bang his head off of my coffee table. He even left a divot in the coffee table. By this time, I had made my way to the front of the apartment complex. I was there to greet him as he came out the front exit. He froze and began to cry, apologizing profusely. Now, I'm not gonna lie, what happened afterwards wasn't my best moment, and I nearly got into legal trouble if it weren't for the fact that he was trespassing on private property. Let's just say I had a cast for 6 weeks, and he wasn't in any family photos for months. I went up to the apartment where she was now fully clothed and crying inconsolably. I then gave her 1 hour to remove all of her belongings, as again, everything in the apartment was mine except for her clothes, some makeup, and a few kitchen utensils. Her mother would not let her move in, as she was just filled with embarrassment. The same was for her brothers, and the cousin's mother kicked out her son. Rumors spread around town very quickly, and for lack of better words, she became untouchable. And honestly, she completely brought this on herself. Wow, that is some serious revenge. You were not only prepared to basically ruin her reputation with the click of a mouse, but you also at least gave her some benefit of the doubt. You said to yourself, okay, maybe nothing's going on. Maybe the cousin is just coming over to help her out with something. But oh boy, was that definitely not the case. That is honestly so disgusting, and I'm so sorry that happened to you. But it honestly seems like it all worked out, because you're now happily married, you've got 3 kids, and you've got nothing to worry about. Whereas your ex is basically ruined for life, and she has nobody else to blame except for herself. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for expecting my very rich sister to pitch in to pay for my wedding after she said that she would? Here's what happened. So to start things out, my mother married my stepdad when I was 17 years old. He had a daughter from a previous marriage by the name of Sarah. Sarah is not her real name. Now, we were never close, because when they moved in with us, Sarah was super clingy, would always follow me around, and basically stalk me in my own home. Your typical know-it-all, barely left the house, so she basically had 0 friends that weren't online. So Sarah managed to graduate early and get into a really good college on scholarships, then got a master's there as well. She's in engineering, and her college is like apparently one of the best ones in engineering. So straight after graduation, she was earning a crazy amount of money. She's been rubbing this in my face ever since she got the acceptance letter. When she was home, she was always wearing the university hoodie, always talking about what she's doing at college, sending videos of robots and stuff like that into the family's group chat. Now that she's earning so much, it's now her doing stuff like paying off our parents' car loans for Christmas or getting extravagant gifts for everyone. We had a few fights about it, but we always made up. So now onto this year. I got engaged last year in February to my fiance. I asked my sister if she would pitch in, and she said she would help out. Knowing she had the money, I got to plan my dream wedding. I was so excited about planning our big day, but that was all until I showed her the plans, and she pulled the rug right out from underneath my feet. She asked me how I'm paying for it. My husband and I didn't go to college, so we are not high earners, and I reminded her that she said she would help. She is now saying that she won't pay for it, and she will be absolutely at most paying for my dress. I told her it's unfair for her to lie to me and only tell me after planning everything that she isn't going to help. She blew up at me over us not being close in the past and blaming me for it. It takes 2 people to bond, but she claims everything's my fault. We argued for a bit, and now she's not even paying for my dress. All the wedding planning I've done has been for nothing now. My parents are split, with my mom saying that Sarah needs to honor her word and let me have the wedding I planned for, and we all pitch in what we can afford. My stepdad, though, is angry that I asked her in the first place and dug up some old arguments from when I was 17. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Yes, you are absolutely the jerk in this situation. Just because your sister is rich after the schooling she went through doesn't mean mean she should pay for your entire wedding. Like, really? Are you that selfish? Like, you are in no way entitled to all this money just for your wedding. She probably said, yeah, I would be more than happy to help out. And you took that as, oh, she's gonna pay for everything. Let's plan this extravagant wedding. Like, are you kidding me right now? The entitlement and absolute bratty nature of this post is just oozing through the text. Like, seriously. Like, first off, you already treated her like garbage when you were kids, and you clearly mocked her for going to college and getting a better education than you ever even tried to get. And now when it's all said and done, you expect her to pay for your entire wedding. And that is so unfair. And worst of all, you're making it sound like she didn't even offer to help you with this wedding. She literally said she would help you buy your dress. And now you're basically calling her a jerk for not paying more money. Like, I clearly get that you're jealous that she makes more money than you, and it sounds like you don't have much to account for in terms of your own career. But that is nobody's fault except for yourself. So in my opinion, I absolutely think you're the jerk. I think the way you treated your stepsister over the years has finally caught up to you. And honestly, if I was in Sarah's shoes, I would be even hesitant in paying for anything in the first place, because you clearly sound incredibly ungrateful, and I don't think she has any obligation to pay for a single thing. Our neighbors have absolutely no respect for our boundaries, and they are constantly wanting to see my dog and causing problems in our life. And at this point, we seriously don't know what to do. So I live in a pet-friendly condo and apartment complex with my partner and our 7-month-old puppy. Beside my building is a wide patch of grass where I take my pup to do her business. I have to cross this area to get to my car as well. On the other side of this patch of grass is a townhouse inhabited by some of the worst people I've ever met. They're obsessed with my dog, who is unfortunately very fond of them. My dog is a Labrador mix, and her only mission in life is to befriend every living thing on the planet. This has made training particularly difficult because we can't get her to listen around other people, as friendship is more rewarding to her than treats. These people have absolutely no respect for the fact that she's my dog, not theirs. If I'm taking her out to go to the bathroom or going to my car with her and they hear us, they'll come out of their house, their car, whatever, just to try and come and play with her. The craziest thing is that they'll go to their door without consulting us first and yell to the rest of the family that our dog is out, while also asking if they want to come and pet her. We get stuck out there for upwards of 20 minutes. If I run into them without my dog, they don't even say hello. We've been telling them recently that they can't pet her unless she sits calmly first, and that they need to back away because the distance helps her to listen. Obviously, they don't care. They inch closer and closer anyways, baby talking her to the point where she's doing corkscrews in the air. Then she gets too wound up to go potty and ends up going to the bathroom in my house. Yesterday was the last straw. My partner took the dog out to go to the bathroom, and the second he steps outside, the mom yells out, "Hi, baby," and the dog starts going ballistic. He tells them the same spiel. They don't listen. They get closer and closer to her and baby talking her, while my partner starts backing away. Then they go inside to invite the rest of the family. Out come 3 children, the mom's boyfriend, and some other random dudes staying there. They all circle around my boyfriend and back him into a corner, inching closer while he's begging them to back away. He picks up the dog who's thrashing in his arms, all while the family is laughing at him and going on about how cute the puppy is. We live constantly on guard, and this has seriously hindered us training our dog. Not to mention she still has accidents inside because of them. These people have caused a lot of problems, but don't listen when confronted. If I did confront them, they would likely start a fight, and the boyfriend would, in that case, surely beat me senseless. The only way we figured out how to handle this is that if we see them going to call into the house that our dog is here, we're going to just pick her up and walk back inside without saying a word to them. Honestly though, this is so frustrating, and we seriously don't know what to do. I think it's time to start getting nasty with these people. It seems like talking to them and being reasonable is not the way this is gonna get taken care of, but you need to seriously be straight up and be like, no, get away from me. And even possibly like record the interaction and tell them straight up, get away from my dog. Stop calling for her and stop asking for her. You are working her up and we can't properly train her. Or something along those lines. These people are being obnoxious. They clearly don't care about you and only care about your dog. So I think it's time to stop being neighbors and start demanding that these people respect your boundaries. And if they keep going on and on about your dog and coming up to you and circling around you when you're just trying to get your dog to go to the bathroom, at that point, it's practically harassment, and that is unacceptable. And if I was in your shoes, it would be time for me to call the police and get them involved. If anything, just to get them to stop. Because what they're doing is super obnoxious. There's no reason for them to be going after your dog like that, as if they they have any claim over that dog in the slightest. So hopefully this all works out. Hopefully your stupid neighbors learn their lesson and they're able to stay away from your dog and let you guys have some semblance of control over the way that your dog acts in public. My father tried to introduce me to his mistress that he was seeing behind all of our backs, and even tried to convince me that this would be my new mother. And now in retrospect, I truly see how awful my father truly was. Here's what happened. So I was around 6 years old when this happened. As a naive child, I was under the assumption that people, when they get married and start a family, are in love overall. But boy was I wrong. My father would take me to a popular Philly cheesesteak place where we lived, and unknowingly I befriend who, at the time, was my father's mistress. For the longest time, I would call this woman the pickle lady, because whenever I showed up with my father, she would welcome us with a cheesesteak and my favorites, pickles. Stupid little first grader me would come home telling my mom all about the nice pickle lady and how my father and I would spend a lot of time at the restaurant that she owned. Hindsight is 2020, and I realize now the pain I must have been inflicting on my mom whenever I would happily come home and talk all about the pickle lady. One day after school, my father decided that he wanted to spend some daughter-daughter time together at the same Philly cheese place, and happy as a clam, I jumped in the car getting hyped for some free pickles. Heading inside the restaurant was all the same. The place was always bustling and smelled of the meat that would go into the sandwiches, but I was after just one thing and one thing only, the pickles. But being a shy and very polite little girl, I greeted the snake in the grass first, with my father ordering for the two of us. Now, it might be because it's been over 20 years since this happened, or because I was a kid who just wanted to do my own thing and always found adult conversations to be dreadfully dull, but I don't remember the conversation that my father was having with this woman before she went to go deal with some new customers. But the next thing I know, when she's out of earshot, my idiot of a parent whispers down to me, "So, do you like the pickle lady?" I say to her, "Yeah, she seems nice, and she always gives me pickles." My father then says, "Good, then how would you like it if I made her your new mommy?" He had the slyest grin on his face, looking like the cat that just ate the canary. Obviously, as a stupid little kid not understanding the true meaning of what he was asking, I start to freak out. I already have a mom. What did he plan to do with my mom? Because my father hated it when I showed too much emotions, I just shook my head with tears stinging in my eyes. But he wouldn't take that as an answer, unfortunately. He started talking to me in Arabic, hushed hisses that burned my ears. "Why not? You said you liked her. I like her too. That's why I want to make her your new mom." It was at this time that I started to cry. I said to him, "I don't want another mom. I want my mom. Don't take my mom away." This thankfully was enough to shut him up and drop the topic, but not before shoving the food in my direction and telling me to shut up and eat the food that he bought. He never brought up the topic again until after the divorce with my parents was settled, and his father wouldn't give his blessing to marry the awful woman who ruined my family. Thankfully, the pickle lady didn't become my stepmom, and now my father has 3 other offspring and 2 more ex-wives that are suing him for what little he's worth. So honestly, to my dad, I hope you have fun paying your other children the child support you never gave me, because you are an absolute jerk. That is honestly awful. I can't imagine being a 6-year-old and having my father figure be like, "Hey, this is gonna be your new mom. What do you think?" Like, are you kidding me right now? This guy literally just admitted that, yeah, I've been cheating on your actual mom, and now I want to make the pickle lady your new mom. Like, what is happening right now? It is so inappropriate to take a child and put him in that kind of situation. The original poster in this story did not deserve that kind of treatment. They thought they were going to this restaurant to get food and meet the cool pickle lady who gives out pickles. Instead, their stupid father drops this news on them, saying, "Oh, I want to make this your new mom. What do you think?" Like any reasonable person, no matter what the age, would be like, "No, I don't want that to be my mom. I have a mom. Are you crazy?" So truly, to the original poster, I'm so sorry you had to deal with this. What an awful father you had to put up with, but it sounds like he got the short end of the stick in life. And honestly, he deserves that based on the way he treated you. Am I the jerk for telling my best friend that I won't be able to go to her wedding? Here's what happened. So my best friend is getting married in just under 3 weeks. I was supposed to be a bridesmaid, and I've been excited for the wedding since before the engagement. I've helped with making decisions on the wedding. I've helped with the bachelorette party. I bought my bridesmaid dress and booked my hotel. I love them as a couple, and they're both my best friends. I've been with my boyfriend for 2.5 years and have known him and his family for 10 years. When we first became a couple, he told me his dad has terminal lung cancer. 3 months ago, we found out that the cancer had spread to his brain, and he was given 3 months to live. Over that time, his health started to decline slowly, and then suddenly, over the last month, due to all of this, we had to miss the bachelorette party as we would have to be away for a few days, but we didn't want to leave my partner's dad. My best friend and I live 2 hours apart and we don't drive. Also, trains are expensive and take even longer than driving, so a last-minute rush from the bachelorette party to his dad's place would be near impossible if anything was to happen. We are now at the end of his dad's prognosis, and he is currently in the last stages of his life. A few days ago, my best friend demanded an answer on if we would be at the wedding or not. Up until then, we believe that we would have been able to attend, but now we are unsure of what will happen. As she demanded an answer, since she didn't want us to cancel last minute, we decided that we would not be attending, as we didn't want to leave it to the day before, despite us being heartbroken that we won't be there. Now, a few weeks ago, my best friend said to make my boyfriend's dad the priority over the wedding day, but she's clearly changed her mind, as in response to my message explaining our choice, she only screenshotted it and then instantly kicked me from the bridesmaid group chat. Then she ignored me for the following few days. When she finally responded, she said that she understood why my partner wasn't attending, but didn't understand why I wasn't there, and she was devastated and angry over the choice. I explained that I refused to leave my partner alone during one of the hardest things he'll ever experience. Plus, his dad also means a lot to me, as I went no contact with my dad 2 years ago, and since then, my boyfriend's dad has basically stepped up and been a father figure to me, so I want to be there for him too. I'm also disabled and haven't traveled alone overnight since 2019. She is still really upset and angry and is ignoring me once again. She said that a few people in her life were on her side, yet people in my life understand my point of view and are upset and shocked with her. So I'm honestly so confused. Am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Personally, in my opinion, I do not think you're the jerk. Your friend is being incredibly selfish. How on earth can she not understand that you want to support your partner as their father passes away? Like seriously, if I was in the original poster's shoes, I would literally be doing the exact same thing. Your friend sounds incredibly selfish and entitled. They seriously want you to prioritize their wedding over somebody passing away? Like really? How selfish can you get? And it doesn't help the fact that she went back on her word. At first, she was saying prioritize this man's health and take care of your boyfriend and all that stuff. But now, once the decision is finally being made and you decide to further explain that yes, we will not be in attendance because somebody is dying, she wants to try and cut you off and be like, how could you do this to me? Like, I'm sorry, the world doesn't revolve around you. You can't seriously be that selfish. But apparently, against all odds, this lady seriously can be that entitled. So no, you are not the jerk. Your best friend hopefully has become an ex-best friend, because that is not somebody I would ever want in my life. My entitled aunt is suing my landlord, claiming that she got hurt on his property and is now potentially ruining my living situation, all because she wants to fake an injury. And at this point, I'm so angry, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Honestly, as I type this out, I don't even know where to begin. The degree of entitlement in my aunt and cousin are so extreme, it's going to be difficult to keep it concise. Let's start with the obvious stuff. A couple of months ago, my aunt visits me from out of town. I have a really small apartment, so at night, I would let her sleep in my bed, and I would go stay at my boyfriend's place. One night, she came home in an Uber from a party. She told me when I dropped her off that she was trying to get drunk. The next day, early before I got up to drive home, she texts me and says that she fell in a hole when the Uber driver dropped her off, and then she says that the Uber driver ran over her foot. At this point, I'm already skeptical. Now, why would I be skeptical, you may ask? Well, my aunt has a repeated history of lawsuits against previous employers, apartment buildings, landlords, and more. This definitely is not her first rodeo. My aunt is an obese woman, and she says that the injuries that were caused, like a slipped disc, were not pre-existent, and that her quality of life has changed. For some additional context, myself and others have always suspected that she has Munchausen. She has always used her health problems to get attention or to get money, and all she talks about are her consistent health problems. It's always something, but none of the resolutions for her presumed health problems are ever pursued to be resolved. I get back and she's walking around, maybe limping a bit, but she kept saying it was her foot hurting her, and she kept icing her foot while her leg was stretched straight out. The test she has done later on has said that she has a partially torn ACL. My best friend recently had that injury, and there's no way she could have laid her leg out flat like that. A couple of days after she leaves, she texts me to tell me that she is suing Uber. Now, I don't acknowledge the text message, and a couple days later, she tells me she is suing my landlord. Now at this point, I'm immediately livid. If this were any other person, I knew their motivations would be different, but I know my aunt, and her pattern of behavior in her life speaks volumes. She doesn't care about the fact that she is compromising my living situation for her own benefit. So how does the entitlement come in, you may be asking? Not only does she think she's entitled to my safety in my own home, but not even a week before, she writes a laundry list of things she wants my father to pay for her daughter's wedding. As a single mother, my family took her daughter under our wing. She would come stay with us during summers and Christmas, and my mom would get her more gifts than we would even get. When we would be called bratty kids and complain, she would tell us that she didn't have a dad to give her gifts, and she didn't want her to feel left out. Why isn't her mother buying her gifts, you may be asking? Well, it's because of her horrendous management of the good money she does make. She says she is always broke, but she has a good salary job, but all of her money goes to God knows where. Is she paying her astronomical credit card payments? I mean, I know it's not going to medical bills, because she frequently brags about how she doesn't pay her medical bills. I mean, who brags about that? Her phone rings all day, collectors are calling her. I mean, seriously, the list goes on. So let's get back to now, asking my dad for thousands of dollars for the wedding, all while she's suing his daughter's landlord behind his back. What does she need this money for, you may ask? Well, her daughter's getting married in October, and like she wrote in that email, she needs money for the wedding. So when I told my parents, my dad got angry. He called, emailed, and texted her that she needed to drop this, but she never responded. The timing was so bad, because the following week, her daughter was supposed to come stay with me for a couple of days. I almost told her not to come, but I felt it was already too late, and I decided I'd try to be the bigger person, because after all, she isn't her mom. But I should have remembered that after 2 years of living with them, she is in fact just like her mother. Oddly enough, I had a medical emergency with my dog the night before she was supposed to stay here, and I couldn't have 2 additional people in my 600 square foot apartment and still be able to take care of my ailing dog properly. So instead, she was able to go stay with a friend. I saw her the first day she was here. I didn't bring up anything and she didn't either, but it was clear there was a huge elephant in the room. That day, my aunt decides to answer my dad by starting a group chat with the 3 of us and sending a picture of her lawyer's card and says that we can ask him any questions. My dad angrily replies saying something like, "Don't text me like that." I didn't hear from my cousin at all that second day, and finally she texts me this long text about how she doesn't feel comfortable with seeing me because of what just happened, and she is saddened by the lack of empathy shown to her mother when her mother needs money to pay for her medical bills, and how this is going to ruin her wedding. Now, at this point, I just straight up let it rip. I pointed out how the funds from that suit wouldn't go to those medical bills because she doesn't pay them, and that's a well-known fact by literally anybody who knows her. So I asked her if she really thinks the funds are gonna go to her wedding. I also brought up her entitlement as well, and in the same sentence where she refuses her entitlement, she starts saying, "Where was the money when I asked for it?" as well as all these other weird excuses. She was also saying, "Well, where's the money I asked for from the will?" despite the fact that we're talking about our grandmother, who by the way, isn't even dead yet. Now, I could go on about my cousin and aunt's entitlement to a little cut of everything me and my family has, but I'll end with another example that gives you a glimpse into their entitlement. When I moved to Utah where they both live, I had to go home to get my stuff and come back. I had originally been visiting and didn't plan on moving, but when I saw it, I wanted to stay. So when I went home to get my things, a mutual friend of ours hung out with the both of them at Dave & Buster's. This particular experience was told to me by this mutual friend when I was trying to excuse their mistreatment as well as the financial nightmare that they put me through. At the time, I knew they were opportunistic, but I never thought that they would do that to their own family. So I would try and make excuses for them. Finally, the friend stops me and tells me, "I wasn't going to tell you this, but I think you need to hear this." While out at Dave & Buster's, they, mostly my aunt, were complaining about how she had no money. My friend, who has no qualms about calling people out, asked her straight up, "Then why are you out spending money right now?" Her response was to straight up say, "It's okay, she has money." And I'm the she that she's referring to. Since my cousin and I had that nasty text conversation, we have not spoken at all. We've gone full no contact, and I have no desire to ever speak to them again. After years of being gaslit by them about their presumed victimhood, it's been a challenge for me to come out of that cloud and see them for exactly who they are. That is a crazy situation and a crazy story. Your aunt and cousin sound like awful people. They literally are only being family with you so they can get money out of you. I mean, your aunt is basically an ambulance chaser, and your cousin is basically walking down that same path as well. I mean, just imagine what she's gonna be like later on in life. Not to mention the fact that your aunt is literally a scam artist. Like, people like this who are blatantly dishonest and clearly trying to ruin other people's lives are just so ridiculous. So hopefully, going no contact with these people will solve all your problems. They sound absolutely awful, and I don't blame you for not wanting anything to do with them. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not inviting my aunt to my wedding? Here's what happened. So I'm a 31-year-old female and I'm getting married in the fall. I had stated from the start that I would strongly prefer if my aunt didn't attend. She has severe developmental delays. She's about the age of a 5-year-old inside. She gets overwhelmed easily and generally doesn't enjoy crowds. She didn't attend my parents' wedding either. I feel strongly that my wedding will not be a fun time for her, as there will be a lot going on and there won't be any food that she enjoys. My aunt likes hot dogs and pepperoni pizza, and the food at this wedding is going to be all vegetarian. I offered to do our own party with her and get all the food that she likes. I said that she could come to the bridal shower if she wanted, as well as the rehearsal dinner or the brunch afterwards. I feel like those events would still be a lot for her, but they're much shorter events. But all of these options were rejected. Instead, they want her to attend the wedding, with 2 people they're going to hire to watch her. I said if she needs 2 people to watch her, is this something she's even going to have any fun with? They also did not offer to cover the extra people I didn't budget for. By the way, my partner and I are paying for 100% of the wedding cost. When I entertained the idea, I asked what the plan would be, because my grandmother and my mother both felt that she was incapable of staying the entire event. I got multiple responses to the same question. She will come to the ceremony and then leave. Or they would say, she will come just for dinner. And then they would say to me, she will come for the ceremony and dinner. I tried explaining to them that coming in the middle of the event was not okay. I expressed concern that there wouldn't be almost any food that she would enjoy. Food is a huge factor for keeping her chill, and she would have to sit around for 2 hours before anything was served that she would enjoy. Knowing her, that would make her anxious and uncomfortable. My grandmother then yelled at me that she could have cheese and crackers, and I tried to tell them that there's no cheese and crackers on the menu. With all of the above, I made the hard decision to just say no. Since then, my mother has called my partner and his mother to try and convince them that we needed to let her come. When this didn't work, they started saying that my partner had told my aunt she could come, and how dare he lie to her, even though that definitely did not happen. My grandmother then also proceeded to tell my future mother-in-law that my partner was a huge jerk for lying. My mother has also accused me of making my grandmother ill over this. Now I'm being told my mother is too sick over this too. So am I the jerk for not wanting my aunt to come along to my wedding? What should I do? Honestly, first and foremost, this is your wedding. No one else gets to decide who can or cannot show up to your wedding. You get final say in that matter. And if you've said that your aunt can't attend, well then guess what? She can't show up. It seems like she has a lot of things going on, and she requires a lot of maintenance that no one is willing to provide. So why would you want to risk that and have the entire moment ruined, all because your aunt suddenly throws a fit? Like, that's not fair. This is a very special day for you, and I don't blame you for putting up boundaries. And the fact that your family is trying to like gaslight you and try and turn you against your partner, as well as all this other garbage, is seriously disgusting. That is a massive red flag, and it shows exactly where their loyalties lie. Instead of listening to you and say, okay, let's try and make accommodations so that somebody can help take care of this aunt while we attend this wedding. But no, they want to be selfish and weird and be like, no, she has to come no matter what. This wedding is literally coming out of your pocket and your partner's pocket. So if I was in your shoes, there's no way I would let anybody boss me around like that. So hopefully this all works out for you, because at the end of the day, this is your wedding, and no one gets a final say in who can and cannot attend except for you and your partner. I dumped my boyfriend after he threw away the urn of my leopard gecko, who passed away previously in my life. And now my friends are saying that I overreacted, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. I'm a 23-year-old female, and I was dating my boyfriend, who's 25 years old, for 6 months, all the way up until a week ago when he came over to help me out when I got really sick. I honestly couldn't leave my room because it was so bad. In my living room, I have a shelf that has old items from pets I owned in the past, such as collars and bowls, but one item on it is an urn that holds the remains of my leopard gecko. Her name was Trick, and I got her as a juvenile when I was 10 years old from a pet store. Shortly after my parents and I realized something was wrong with her front leg, we took her to the vet who told us she was underdeveloped, and as she got older it would get worse and start to twist. It wasn't metabolic bone disease. Her other legs were fine. It was just that when she was born, for whatever reason, her leg didn't form correctly up to her shoulder. We also found out she had some digestion issues, but in my household we keep pets even if they have challenges, or if they need medications or some specific kind of care. We just adapt and move forward. With the suggestion of the vet, we didn't use substrate because she could get stuck and suffocate. So instead we used a mat that only juveniles usually use and took her back often for checkups in regards to her diet and nutrients to make sure she could live the best life that she could. Unfortunately, due to her issues, she didn't live the average lifespan a normal healthy leopard gecko could live, which is between 15 and 20 years. She passed at the age of 10, a couple months after my 20th birthday. I was devastated, and we ended up burying her in the backyard of my parents' house where I lived until I was moving out at 22. I felt so bad about leaving her behind, especially because my parents expressly wanted to move away in a few years, so my mom and dad suggested we dig up her bones and put it in a little urn that my mom bought for me, which is what I did before I moved to my current house. Now, from that day on, she has sat on that shelf all the way up until I found out her urn was missing the day after I started to feel better. I frantically called my boyfriend asking if he moved her urn, and then he said something that absolutely blew me away. He said to me, "I threw it away. Keeping the bones of a dead animal for so long is really stupid." I almost screamed at him, but instead I hung up and dug through the garbage before finding Trick's urn. I made sure to clean it very well, and I ignored his calls for most of the day until I finally answered at night. I kept asking him why he would do this, or how he could possibly throw away something so precious to me. He finally blurted it out. He said, "It's not like it was a real pet like all the other ones." He was referring to the paw prints and ashes from previous cats and dogs that my family owned. He even said, "It was just a stupid lizard," which made me immediately say, "I'm breaking up with you," and then I hung up. My parents agreed that it was right to kick him to the curb, but since then some of our mutual friends are split. Some of them are agreeing that it was a monstrous thing for him to do that, and others are telling me I overreacted, and how could I prioritize something dead over my boyfriend? Since then, I've been getting calls and text messages from my boyfriend, switching between apologizing to then calling me names and then calling me crazy. I just don't get how he thought I would be fine with this decision. He knew months before we were dating that I had an urn and how precious that shelf of items was to me. I even would have understood if he didn't want to date me originally because he thought it was weird, because I know a lot of other people don't really save things like this for reptiles, rodents, or a fish. I'm so frustrated, and I feel like I want to cut off those friends who are sticking up for him, as well as my ex, and just move on completely. Yet I'm honestly still so hurt. I mean, what if he didn't tell me right away? Or it was trash pickup day and I lost her forever? Should I just cut contact with everyone who thinks he was in the right? How do I prevent people from doing this in the future? What should I do? First and foremost, to kind of get the logistics out of the way, I think maybe putting it in some kind of case so that it's harder for people to put their hands on those items would probably be in your best interest. Look, these things are important to you, and that in and of itself is more than enough reason for you to say, look, you shouldn't have done that. That was so inappropriate. The item literally doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it was a childhood toy or something like that, or even mementos from previous pets in this case. The fact of the matter is, your boyfriend completely disrespected you. He decided something for you without talking to you about it first. He decided, you know what, this is weird and I'm gonna throw it away. This is really dumb. But in reality, if you flipped the script and threw something away that meant a lot to him, he would probably freak out and lose his mind. He would act like a giant toddler and you would get the blunt end of the stick. So honestly, it is incredibly hypocritical for him to not only make this decision for you, but then turn around and be like, no, this is your fault. This is not your fault. You are not the jerk. Anyone who's agreeing with your boyfriend is a complete moron. It's also really sketchy that you've only been with this guy for what, 6 months? And he's turning around making these weird decisions for you? Like, that's a massive red flag in my opinion. So truly, good riddance. This guy was clearly a complete dirtbag, and you absolutely deserve way better than this weirdo. Am I the jerk for refusing to keep doing household chores for my wife? Here's what happened. So I've been married to my wife by the name of Bella for 5 years. Bella is not her real name. We both met and went to the same college. She was pre-law while I was doing animation. She graduated top of our class and went to a top 20 law school. While she was in law school, I had a lot of trouble finding a job in my field, or even a job at all really. I ended up working in a kitchen as a line cook to help support us while she was going to school so she could focus on her classes. Bella got a very good job in a different state after she graduated, so I quit my job and haven't gotten another one since. We have no kids, a nice house for the two of us, and are overall living very, very comfortably. She works very long hours, so I take care of most of the household things: cleaning, cooking, grocery shopping, repainting the walls, and doing other work and renovations to the house. In the last 6 months, Bella has started referring to me as her household husband around her family, as well as around her friends. I've mostly been letting it go, but every single time it bothers me. I'm already insecure about not being able to find a good job, and it makes me feel even more inadequate. I finally reached the end of my rope when we were with her mother on Sunday, who still doesn't really approve of me, and they were talking about taking care of the lawn and garden, and she said to me, "Thank goodness I have a house husband for that, or I'd never find the time." And then she smiled at me. They then both laughed at me, and it was humiliating. I didn't say anything at first, but I guess she could tell that I was really upset and asked me what was wrong. I told her that she needed to stop emasculating me and making it seem like I didn't contribute anything to the household. We argued back and forth, and she told me that she would stop calling me a house husband, especially if I was gonna get upset about it, but that it wasn't an untrue term and I needed to stop being insecure. Bella refuses to apologize. I feel like she doesn't fully appreciate my value as her husband. I've stopped doing chores until she apologizes, and she is beyond angry. She's been coming home and cooking dinner only for herself and doing the chores I haven't, and then taking off to spend the night at her friend's house. I was talking to my sister about it, and she told me that Bella was wrong, but I was being immature in my response. The thing is, if I give in, she's going to keep thinking that what she's been doing is okay, and I don't even know what to do anymore. Am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? The way your wife is acting is absolutely atrocious. She is saying one thing, "Oh, I'm not making fun of you," but then literally laughs in your face and mocks you in front of her mother, as well as her family and her friends. That is unacceptable. It's clearly bothering you, and she needs to apologize. Like, that is really rude. No one should do that to another partner who's trying to make things happen. In my opinion, Bella is being incredibly toxic. Like, flip the script for a second. What if you were the one working full time and you were just calling her, "Oh, you're just a household wife. You just do the chores. Good thing you're doing it." Like, that, in my opinion, is really degrading, and it does make it seem like, oh, you just live at home. You just take care of the home. You don't do anything. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I find that kind of vernacular towards your partner in life to be incredibly inappropriate. You're dissolving that person down to just the chores they do. At that point, they're nothing more than a housemaid, male or female. So yeah, I think your wife is being a jerk, and if she wants to drive you away, then this is a really good way to make that happen. There's also a mistaken idea that maybe this is okay because it's a factual statement, but not only is the way she's saying it really immature and very inappropriate, but also the implication of what she's saying and how she's using it as some kind of butt of the joke is, in my opinion, incredibly inappropriate. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think it's inappropriate that the original poster has reacted in the way that they have, where they're just saying, "All right, I'm just not going to do any chores, I'm not going to cook anything," or things along those lines. I think there's a much better way to handle this kind of situation, and the way they're going about doing this is really not okay. So hopefully some kind of communication and some kind of conversation can happen from this, because honestly, the way the original poster is acting after all this went down is really manipulative. You're trying to force an apology almost, and unfortunately, that's not how this is going to get solved. And hopefully, with some communication and apologies on both ends, this can work out for the best. My entitled boss fires me under false accusations that I'm stealing money from their store, so I decide to get revenge by complaining to corporate, setting off a chain reaction of events that eventually led to my coworkers getting arrested, as well as 2 different stores getting shut down. And I'm so happy to see karma take down people who absolutely deserve it. Here's what happened. So after university, I fell on rough times and was forced to move back to my hometown. I tried to transfer my job to a branch in my area, but I failed. Thus, I needed to get a new job. I settled for a 20-hour work job at Bookies with a second bartending job in the evenings. The Bookies is the target of my revenge, which was entirely by accident. So these are the people that are involved in this situation. By the way, all these names are fake and they have been changed. My manager's manager is by the name of Janelle. My main manager is Shay, and George and Gordon are my coworkers, with Kara being a coworker from another store, and this will be relevant later. I ended up working behind the counter as a customer service manager, basically a step up from a cashier. It's fancy when seen on a resume, but there's nothing really to it. I took bets, chatted with customers, I helped people with the machines, and for the vast majority of my shift, I sat around waiting for something to do. I got along well with my other coworkers and I had no major issues. Well, or so I thought. It was 20 hours of work a week, and it was about $1 more than minimum wage with a lot of overtime required of me while also including irregular shift patterns. Now, I had no issues with the job, beyond how difficult it was to juggle the schedules of both of my jobs. In February, after working for the company for about 6 months, I was invited to a probation hearing. It cannot be emphasized enough that it was a probation hearing in which I would have my performance reviewed and was entitled to a pay rise at the end of it. But I arrived that morning to a disciplinary hearing, where without even a shred of evidence, I was accused of 11 different cash discrepancies, dating all the way back until November when I just started working there. It totaled up to about $272, and all but one of the transactions I even knew about. These had apparently been reported and logged by my manager Shay and my coworkers, despite no one saying a word to me at all. Not a whisper in the 5 months this had apparently been occurring. I was told that it was unacceptable. A call was made to HR, and I was terminated on the spot, forced then to hand over my keys and never set foot in that store again. To my protest, I was told the decision could not be appealed, and I would eventually receive written confirmation of my employment's termination in the mail. I didn't let myself slump around and feel sorry for myself. So on my way home, I opened up Indeed and applied for a bunch of jobs. And before I arrived home, I had an interview set up for the next week at what is now my current place of work. Now, I was furious, fuming at having gone to what I thought should have been a normal probation meeting and having effectively been called a thief and banned for life from a place I'd never go to anyways. But somehow my parents were angrier and ordered me to let them know when they got into contact with me again. Almost 2 weeks later, I received an email from the company's HR, which reiterated the accusations and stated again that I was terminated. My mom sat me down in her kitchen and walked me through a letter response that was 2 parts professional and 3 parts scathing, ripping into them about their unprofessional conduct, their ludicrous claims, their lack of evidence, the holes in their story because there were quite a few, and finally the cherry on top of the cake, the employment laws that they had just broken. Now, I didn't want much, I just wanted a nice reference, a promise that not a whisper of these accusations would turn up when my new job asked them for a reference, because by then, I had already been offered the job at my current place that I work at. I then attached the letter to an email to fire back at their HR department. I then added Janelle's work email, and as a reminder, Janelle is the manager to my manager by the name of Shay. Anyways, I then add her boss's email, and finally, I add the holding company that owned the brand, because I wanted to make sure that this was seen. Now, as a bit of background, the bookies I work for is a brand that is owned by an international company. Their name is slapped on everything, and they pretty much dictate everything that we did. I'm not sure if holding company is the correct term, but I'll stick with that for now. Anyways, I sent this email with a 48-hour window for response. I received a reply the next day from the same email that my demands were being met. I smirked victoriously and moved on with my life, happy to finally wash my hands with the entire ordeal. However, I had set off a chain reaction that I wouldn't know about until 3 months later. Fast forward 3 months and I settled into my new job. I was at a call center position with double the hours and well over double the pay. I had gone through training and was settling into my new position when I see a new set of trainees settling in near my team. Among them was Gordon, one of my coworkers from the bookies. I was stunned. Gordon had been at the bookies for 6 years when I joined. He was well liked, good at his job, and a favorite of the managers. There was no way that he had been fired. Now, I didn't really want to talk to him, but I did want to know what happened. Luckily, on seeing me in the break room one shift, he sought me out and told me everything. Apparently, my email had been read by the higher-ups in the holding company and had caused a lot of scrutiny to fall onto the bookies in our town. Someone in HR passed a message down to the area manager claiming that they wanted things investigated and they wanted results yesterday, causing him to drop everything and descend on our little town with a panic and aggression of a man whose superiors were watching his every breath. He went to Janelle wanting to know everything. He wanted to know why he wasn't made aware of this previously, especially when there was money being stolen. He wanted to know why I was even given keys to the shop or why I had shifts on my own when allegations of that that nature were attributed directly to me. He also wanted to know why I had not been put under investigation. It turns out that Janelle had in fact put in my employee file that I was under investigation, but had never actually gone through with any of the official proceedings to officially monitor me or investigate me. Thus, she had fired me for the accused crime without looking into it at all, falsely claiming otherwise. So, the area manager took the dates and the amounts of the cash discrepancies, confirmed that they had been reported on those days without my knowledge, and this was all in my other manager's logbook of the shop's cash, and then sent that information onto our security team to investigate. Another little detail is that we have a CCTV for every shop, and it is outsourced to a private security company who monitors each shop remotely and has access to all the cameras and videos. As we proceed, they looked into the dates mentioned to see if I'd done anything sketchy. Now, I know that I didn't do anything, and nothing was ever said to me, but what they did find was astonishing. It turns out money was going missing from the shop, but surprise, surprise, it wasn't me. But instead, it was George, another coworker, as well as my manager by the name of Shay. They not only set me up for reasons I will never know, but they were also falsifying numbers and cashing checks on the system to hide it. One thing my manager was caught doing was deliberately shortchanging customers by taking portions of their winnings without them knowing it. Bear in mind, a lot of customers were elderly men and women. Gordon even claims that he once opened the shop after myself and Shay had closed the night before and did notice a cash difference, but had been told to not say anything to me as I was under investigation and it could compromise what they were doing. He did apologize and I did let it go. Needless to say, George and Shay were fired, but it doesn't end there. Our team was small, including me. There was a total of 4 people working at the store. As they hadn't been able to hire anybody to replace me, George and Shay's termination meant that Gordon was the only employee at the busiest shop in our area. Even if they'd been able to get the other colleagues from the 2 other shops to help out, it would not have been enough to keep the shop open and manage the amount of customers they dealt with. So they closed the location down until they could get the staff to run it. It was at that point that Gordon handed in his resignation and applied for his job at my work, meaning that they had no one. Now, on top of that, Gordon's girlfriend worked in the same shop as Janelle, and she relayed that she was rarely at their store in another town for the next few weeks before the area manager reported that she was fired as well, and they never knew a reason why she was fired. I was later issued an apology for everything that happened by the area manager and informed that Janelle was no longer with the company in an email sometime later. But somehow it doesn't end there. With the store I worked at closed, this store being on the high street where most people preferred to go, the only other location in town was a much smaller store in the suburbs, the one where Kara worked at alone. Kara is a coworker from another store. She suddenly received an influx of customers into her tiny store space and had absolutely no support from other staff or upper management. Thus, for her own mental health, having already been overworked and underpaid and running an entire store by herself, she straight up quit, meaning that location had to be closed down as well. And all of this was at the worst time possible. In March, there's a festival going on, and this is a huge moneymaker for my city as well as for the gambling industry. And this was an opportunity the 3 other bookies on the high street absolutely reaped the benefits of. And this is because all the former customers from my old job went to the 3 other bookies because my old job had been shut down. As it currently stands, just over a year later, both shops remain closed, and I'm currently entering a job in cybersecurity, the training for which I paid for with my current job. So if I had a message for my former employer, honestly, thanks for firing me, stupid, because you did me a huge favor. Before we go any further, the original poster has an update to their story. Here's what they had to say. Gordon and I got in touch with our old area manager, and we were able to get a bit more information from him of what went down. You remember how I said there's a private security team that was investigating everything? Well, that security team rifled through all 3 years worth of footage after they found out about George and Shay and have estimated that in that period alone, they stole nearly $4,000 through various means. The parent company also got involved and searched through years worth of their cash checks and noted plenty of irregularities. The parent company pursued criminal charges and George and Shay were arrested. As far as our area manager knows, the case is still ongoing. He thinks it's because they are still looking into how much they actually stole. They had been there for a while. George was there for about 8 years and Shay was there for about 10 years. Now, I don't think they'll have security footage of all that time, but I bet they're trying to get more accurate figures to really nail them for it. Now, at this point, I need to introduce a new person in the story. Her name is Tammy, and Tammy is not her real name. She's an employee who was hired and fired shortly before I was, and this was all at the same store. She lasted just past her probation before she was fired, and wait for it, she was fired for months worth of cash differences, as well as false checks that she wasn't made aware of prior. However, her situation is far worse than mine. Tammy is in the process of suing the company for wrongful termination, alongside financial and emotional damages, as she was put under a lot of stress whilst in the job by Shay. Apparently, Shay had left her to fend for herself and would refuse to step in when customers got aggressive. Tammy also unfortunately had a miscarriage shortly after her employment was terminated. Now, our area manager doesn't know anything more, as it is escalated and gone way above his head, and I doubt I'll be able to get any more information on it. But I seriously doubt the company's doing too well on that front, and I honestly wish her the best. Gordon and I are considering reaching out to some of the other fired employees, of which he can name a few who were terminated for similar reasons, just to try and get their side of things. But it seems very clear to me that what Shay and George were doing was going on for a long time, and I was only the latest scapegoat. Janelle, unfortunately, is perfectly fine as far as I'm aware. She and her husband opened up a taxi company several years ago, and she seems to have just got more involved with that. I haven't seen her, so I honestly wouldn't know. But she was terminated for gross misconduct and for not following procedure, which is kind of what I expected. But honestly, I'm so glad I don't work there anymore, and all the bad karma that fell on all these people was absolutely well deserved. Wow, that's really funny. Here you are just trying to get a job and make ends meet, only to then become the scapegoat of these absolute criminals. These people have probably stolen thousands of dollars from their employer, and they've been pinning it on you and Tammy and who knows how many other people just to try and get away with it. It was clearly a coordinated effort, and that's honestly so disgusting to do to somebody. I mean, with all things considered, Shay as well as George and Janelle, they all deserve everything and exactly what happened to them. They quite literally threw you under the bus, and that's so unfair to you. But you know what? It really looks like it worked out for you. You got a better job, and because you complained to corporate directly, you were able to get them in trouble for the things that they did. So if anything, I guess there is a silver lining here, because at the end of the day, these people got exposed for the criminals they are, and hopefully in the future you never have to deal with anyone like that ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled job refuses to give me a raise, so I talk with the boss and instead receive a $27,000 bonus, and I've never been happier to leave a company in my life. Here's what happened. A few jobs ago, I worked for a huge corporation as a software developer. After a few years there, I became project lead and successfully completed many projects that would net the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. One year in February, we started a project with 8 people. A few weeks into the project, I was basically doing all the work by myself because the rest of the people were fired or they quit the job. What followed was 60 plus hours of work for 9 months straight. I was still naive, and I thought that this would lead to a big raise in the upcoming performance review, and literally 4 days before the performance review, my boss, by the name of Bob is not his real name, had a medical emergency and had to be hospitalized for a long time. So I scrambled, desperately trying to find somebody who could give me a well-deserved raise. Eventually, my boss's boss got back to me and told me that there's nothing that they can do for me right now because Bob has to approve that raise. I'd either have to visit him in the hospital or wait until he gets back. What they obviously left out was the window of getting a raise would indeed pass by the time Bob would get back to work, which is a very convenient way that they wanted to try and screw me over. What the company didn't know was that I knew Bob from university. He's nearly 20 years older than me and decided to get his master's degree when he was in his 40s. We had quite a few classes together and became good friends. Well, as much as you can be friends with a guy with a wife, 4 kids, and a crazy work schedule. So of course I visited Bob in the hospital. He was mostly fine, but had to stay for quite a few weeks for some surgeries. We spoke about the company for a while, and he told me he's gonna quit soon. I told him that I was thinking about doing the same if I didn't get a big raise. He said that we could try a big raise, but he's only allowed to give me a certain percentage each year, and anything above that usually gets automatically shut down by the higher ups. Then he pondered for a while and eventually started laughing before shouting out, "Of course, the bonuses! We sometimes sometimes got a small bonus for a big, successful project, the equivalent of a slap in the face in paychecks form when you consider how much the company earned versus what you got from it. Now, remember how the project was for 8 people? It was still set up for 8 people, and it was billed as such to the customer. Despite the fact that I was doing all the work, Bob picked up the phone, called his secretary, and told him to file my performance review in such a way so that I get all 8 bonuses. It was roughly $2,500 all the way up to $4,000 per person, so in total it was $27,000 as a bonus, which was way more than I would ever get in terms of a raise at this company in the following years. A few weeks went by and I thought for sure I was going to get an angry call from one of the higher-ups or from the financial department at some point, but nope, the year ended and I got a big fat bonus. I then handed in my resignation letter shortly after that, and once Bob fully recovered, he also left the company a few months after me, and I'm honestly glad to never go to that place ever again. Honestly, that is an awesome way to get paid out. Can you imagine doing all that work and not only hoping for some kind of big paycheck, but getting something that is well beyond anything you ever expected? $27,000 for a job, all of a sudden for a bonus? I don't know about you, but that's massive in my opinion. That would be insane to have drop on your desk at the end of the year. And you know what? It was so well deserved. The original poster was literally doing all of the work. Nobody was on their side, and nobody was even helping them get stuff done. 60-hour work weeks for what, 9 months? I would have lost my mind after month 3 of doing that. So truly good for you for not only getting out of there, but also cleaning house on the way out, because getting a $27,000 bonus at the end of the year is awesome. My coworker and boss don't quite understand our pay period, and as a result, there's a very high likelihood I'm going to get overtime without even meaning to. Here's what happened. I work 4 10-hour shifts, so I always get my full 40. I have 3 days off every week, and it's always consecutive, and 3 of those 4 days, I get to be all by myself in the store. The problem with the job lies with the day where I work with my coworker, but that's not really the story that I'm telling here. The malicious compliance has to do with that coworker by the name of Ben. Ben is not their real name, as well as my manager by the name of Chris. Chris is also not his real name. And as a side note, I've only seen Chris maybe twice in the month and a half I've been there. So when I started about 5 or 6 weeks ago, Ben told me that his daughter's birthday was on a Wednesday, which is a day where he works alone. In fact, it's inventory day, which is the only day out of the week that Chris shows up to the shop. He needed the day off. I immediately said yes, wanting to get that sweet, sweet overtime, and also wanting to start getting a little better known by Chris. The only way I could show him I had good ideas was if I could work on a Wednesday. So I put it on my calendar, and we kind of just let it go for a few weeks. Fast forward to yesterday, and Ben and I are working together, and he says to me, "Oh, by the way, I talked to Chris, and he says that since you're taking my shift on Wednesday, I'm going to work your Thursday shift since you're not allowed to have any overtime." Now, when he said that, I was taken aback. I don't remember anyone telling me that in an interview, and I was a little confused. I just said to him, "Oh, okay, I guess," and I just let it go. So it's right about then that my malicious compliance came in. After that happens, I go sit down and start figuring stuff out. Our pay periods are 2 weeks. They start on Thursdays and end on Wednesdays. Our owner does payroll Wednesday night or Thursday morning, and we get paid on Friday. It's a great system. However, the way the pay period is set, because I'm covering his shift on a Wednesday, I'm still gonna get 10 hours of overtime. It'll still be 90 hours in a pay period. However, this means that when Ben covers my shift on Thursday, he's also gonna get 10 hours of overtime on the next pay period. So now I'm sitting here thinking, well, do I just keep my mouth shut and take the 10 hours of overtime this week, even though I'll miss 10 hours and Ben will get 10 hours overtime next week? Or do I say to my manager, "Hey man, why doesn't Ben take my shift this Sunday instead?" Just so it stays on the same pay period. But you know what? I kind of want to take the overtime. So when it comes time to it, I think I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and not say a single thing. First off, that's really funny that you figured that out. And honestly, I would probably try and do the same thing. But regardless of what you decide to do, whether it's keeping your mouth shut and being like, all right, whatever, let's just see what happens, or if you decide to say something and try and switch things around, make sure they don't try and mess you over. Small businesses and small employers tend to try and do that. They try to move hours around so you don't have that overtime that you're expecting. So I would just try and make sure to keep them honest, because you know what? They're clearly making a mistake, and there's no reason for you to have to lose money all because they're trying to deny you your overtime. An entitled Karen tries to ruin my professional career and my life after her son fails to complete his portion of our group project in college. So as a result, I decided to get some revenge, and as a result, I end up ruining this lady's life by getting her fired from her job and tarnishing her reputation forever. And I've never felt better about getting revenge in my life. Here's what happened. So for a bit of backstory, when I was in college, my pathophysiology class had a final project worth 50% of the total grades we could earn, and groups were picked at the beginning of the semester. This was a massive project that you were expected to start working on at the beginning of the semester, and if you thought you could do it all last minute, you were probably in for a bad time. It was myself, two other girls who I knew worked hard, and then this one guy that the one girl was crushing on. She just had to have him in our group because he was cute or something like that. I have no idea. I call him idiot every time I tell the story though, because he truly was an idiot. The girls were fantastic, and everyone pulled their own weight during this project, with the exception to the idiot. The idiot never once did any of the group project work. He ignored all messages through texting or Facebook, but would answer the one girl if she was flirting with him. He would only show up to class maybe twice a month, if that. He would constantly post photos of himself on vacations in Mexico or in the Bahamas. I'm pretty sure he spent more time out of the country than actually in it. 1 week before the project is due, he messages the entire group asking what pages in the textbook he needs to look through to do his part of the project. We tell him what he needs to do and where to find the information. We laid everything out for him. I mean, if we did anything more, we would have been better off doing his part of the project ourselves. The idiot thanks us and then disappears. We all assumed he was doing the work he needed to do, and we were prepared to take the hit on our marks because he didn't have anything done until now, so the quality of his work was probably terrible at best. The project due date rolls around, and he's nowhere to be found, and is ignoring all of our desperate messages. Myself and the two girls go to the professor and tell her everything that happened, along with literally months worth of conversations where we constantly tried to get this idiot to come to labs with us or go to the library, where we offered to help him do his part. The professor was not amused, immediately fired off an email to the idiot while also forwarding that email to the head of the program as well, basically saying that idiot needs to either do his part and show up to class this week with it, or he will receive a 0, and the rest of us will not be affected. Now, I'm sure you can guess exactly what is about to happen. The idiot was a no answer and no show, with no excuses or anything. The professor gave him a big fat 0. It turns out that he needed to do this project and do well on it to pass. He failed every test, and with this failure, he was denied from passing that semester. I'm fairly certain he had to retake that course during the summer, which means he, or more likely his mom, had to shell out another $1,300 just for that class. A couple of months later, in the college bookstore, idiot and his mother, who I will call the Screamer, run into myself and the other girl who didn't like him, and Screamer absolutely loses it on the girl and I, screaming at all of us, saying we were constantly harassing her son, and she was going to make it impossible for myself or the girl to find work. The idiot's mom worked in the same field that our degrees were for, and she sat in the board of directors for the Public Health Alliance for the area, so she was a public figure and a supposedly well-behaved and educated one as well. She was escorted out by security shortly afterwards, but that wasn't all she had planned. This idiot's mom ended up dragging myself and the girl through every single college meeting they could schedule regarding our non-existent negative behavior towards her son, where he claimed he was constantly harassed, and yet they didn't have any proof. It was literal months of this poor girl and I having to change our schedules for school classes and studying just so we didn't have any classes or run-ins with this idiot, as that's what the college demanded we do. It made our last year, our 2 semesters, a living nightmare because we couldn't be anywhere near this idiot, otherwise we would face interdisciplinary hearings or worse. So now, with all that in mind, it was now time for revenge. The security company that handled the contract for the college was also the same company that handled the contract where I used to work. I was extremely close friends with the night shift supervisor. We would go out and have drinks. We would play Halo all night with him and his girlfriend. We were very close. So one night after I finished work, I asked him for a huge favor, on the promise that I wouldn't tell a soul he helped me, and telling him that he would have another great video to share with his friends. I asked him to email me a video to my personal email account. You see, after I told him what happened and on what day and what time it happened between me and the Screamer and this idiot, he drove me to the campus. Just after the main building had closed, him and I walked over to the security office where they had all of the recordings that run back to the day the security system was installed. He then brought the video up of the idiot's mom in the college bookstore with the audio and all of her screaming at myself and my friend. He recognized this screaming moron, and it turns out she's done this before at a different site that he patrols, and that he was told he had to keep it quiet by his supervisors. I told him he could be as quiet as he wanted, but I was going to get my revenge on her specifically. A quick email later, and I was in possession of this scathing video. I then found out who the rest of the board members were over the course of a few days, and they were all sent an email with a video of this lady going absolutely crazy in the college bookstore, screaming at an obviously confused guy and a freaked out girl. The audio perfectly captured the moment where she threatened to make it impossible for me or the girl to find any work anywhere within that district, followed by her argument with security as she was escorted out of the building. I never received any replies from the board members, so I just wanted to see what would happen. The screamer was eventually voted out from her position after the video was shown during one of the meetings that she was attending. She lost her very comfortable government job and was last seen working in an old folks home, according to a mutual friend. I'm not sure what happened to the idiot, but I did hear from the same mutual friend that he never did graduate and now works in a call center. The girl and I ended up finding full-time work immediately after graduating, and we thankfully never had any issues there. And the security guard ended up getting hired by a really good company, so I guess good things really do happen to good people. That is actually insane. Here you are just trying to figure out your final project. You're just trying to graduate this class and graduate on time. And then this idiot not only doesn't do his work, but then this idiot sends his mother after you and promises some kind of retaliation towards your professional career. And that is honestly atrocious. I literally can't imagine how stressful that might be just because her stupid son is a complete idiot. And you know what? In retrospect, the name idiot was very fitting of this stupid guy in the story because he clearly didn't do anything right. He didn't even show up to classes, maybe twice a month? Like seriously, how could this guy possibly think he was going to graduate on time? And the retaliation from the original poster was beautiful. They swept in and did exactly what they needed to do to make sure this lady was put in her place. This entitled Karen was way out of line. She had no right to threaten anybody's jobs and livelihood in that way, especially to college students who are on the verge of moving on with their lives and having some semblance of a career. So honestly, I'm just so glad that things worked out for the original poster and everybody involved, because they did not deserve this level of scrutiny, and the things they went through were completely inappropriate. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My boss's girlfriend thinks she knows my job better than I do, so I decide to maliciously comply, resulting in the customers becoming incredibly unhappy. And I've never been more satisfied to see that happen, with me on the verge of leaving this job and moving on to better things. Here's what happened. So to start things out, let me set the scene for you. I've been an apprentice at a small bookstore for the past 2 years now, and I've only recently passed my exam to make me a certified bookseller. Before that, due to a very toxic work environment before COVID times, the only other full-time working employee whom I looked up to as kind of a mentor quit barely 4 months after I started my apprenticeship, and I've had to bend over backwards since then trying to fill the holes that were created when she left. These past 2 years have been interesting to say the least. Now, starting with the store itself, it's really cute. The only problem is that it's drowning in old books people drop off all the time, and it's just simply too much stuff cramped into a tiny space altogether, resulting in a chaos that makes it very hard to keep everything in check and not lose track of anything. So I've learned to adapt and combat this chaos by keeping lists of basically everything, double checking to make sure everything's in order, etc. This will be important later. Now, as for my colleagues, I am on pretty good terms with most of them, that is, except for one person specifically, and that person is my boss's girlfriend. In the beginning, I didn't get why my colleagues didn't like her very much. Now, 2 years later, she is the main reason I will be leaving this job at the end of September, because frankly, I am fed up. If I put everything that happened in these 2 years into this post, it would be very long, so I will just cut to the chase. Due to the aforementioned chaos that plagues this store, I double check everything to avoid any mistakes. This includes also customer orders. Basically, we get the books, I find out who the book is for, and I call the customer to tell them their book is ready to be picked up by them. Sometimes people order more than one book, which is where things can get tricky because not every order arrives at the same time due to an array of factors. Adding to this, we also order used books, which has nothing to do with our computer system, which makes it extra prone to forgetting about something. Because this happens a lot with orders that include more than one book, I just like to take a quick glance at the computer system to make sure nothing is missing from the order before I call. Because in the past 2 years, I've had the experience that people tend to get annoyed after a while if you keep calling them about incomplete orders. So say you've ordered 5 books and only 4 arrive, with the next one probably arriving the day after. We'll wait until everything is complete and then we'll call. Obviously there's exceptions, but you catch my drift. Then a few weeks back, the girlfriend noticed I was doing this and started to exclaim her dissatisfaction with the way I was handling the customer orders. She thinks doing this quick extra step cost me valuable time that could be spent elsewhere. I would also like to add at this point that she spends a lot of time in the afternoons in the store online shopping, as well as being on phone calls with her daughter. She says the way I'm doing things is completely unnecessary. Now, I thought this was a pretty stupid opinion, since she rarely does the customer calls in the first place. I tried to tell her why I personally think this step takes away the risk of confusion, as well as customers getting annoyed. She then proceeded to tell me, well, it doesn't matter what you think, this is our store. And this made me angrier than I could possibly describe, because if I weren't there, the store wouldn't be running in the first place. I mean, after all, they have managed to get almost every other employee to quit with the work environment they created the past 2 years, and I'm the only one who's in the store every day from 9 to 6. She also made a point to tell me how she thinks it's rude that I always talk back and always just have to have the last word. Now, I took this personally. I genuinely just want to bring good ideas in and make the workflow as smooth as possible. And if someone comes along with a point like this, I feel like I have to make them see my point of view in some kind of way. Anyway, since I won't be in the store much longer, I simply don't care anymore. So I've decided to do exactly as she told me. So as an example, let's say you've ordered 5 books from us. 2 of them arrive on the first day and then suddenly you get a call from us. You ask us, really? All 5 books are there already? But I'm gonna say, oh no, sorry, only 2 arrived today. Then the next day, another 2 arrive. You receive yet another call from us. I mean, surely we're calling because everything's ready to go, right? Well, wrong. It's not ready. You see how this would get annoying after a while? So yeah, I just stopped double checking and everything just kind of went downhill from there. At risk of my seeming unprofessional, but to my great satisfaction, customers are getting more and more irritated with each call where I don't seem to know where their entire order is. Or I'm calling about an incomplete order. It would have gotten to this point sooner or later anyways, since I will be gone at the end of September. But honestly, in the end, it just gives me a little bit of personal satisfaction after 2 years of dealing with this insanity. Yeah, that's a classic case of someone coming in and pretending like they know what they're doing, but in reality, they're just a leech and they have no clue what's going on. The original poster clearly came up with a good strategy. They knew how to keep this place going and keep everything on point. They knew what they were doing and they just needed to do their job. But of course, the girlfriend of the boss just has to come in and try and throw some kind of wrench in the wheel. I mean, honestly, thank goodness you've got your certificate, so now you can sell your own books and do it your own way. Because I guarantee you, you're gonna do it way better than these people. Because these people have maybe a few months tops without your help. And honestly, they deserve all of that, especially with the way they've been treating you. An entitled Karen pretends to have an appointment for their kid just so they can then spread their religious and political garbage to a doctor that is already busy enough. And I've never felt more foolish to give out an appointment so easily in my life. Here's what happened. So this happened in early fall of 2022, a couple months before the midterm elections, but it didn't occur to me until now that I should probably post this for the world to see. I'm a nurse who works with Dr. Sam. Dr. Sam is not his real name. Now, Dr. Sam is an amazing guy, very friendly, and has kind of a wicked sense of humor. He's also very intelligent and knows how to explain all the technical medical stuff in an easy to understand way. This is important because in his specialty, a lot of new patients come in to see him already thinking they're on death's door, and that usually isn't the case. Now, the problem with Dr. Sam is that I don't work at his main office, just at a satellite office. His main office is more than 500 miles away. This means that Dr. Sam comes to the satellite office only on certain days of the month, which in turn means that his schedule is always very full and appointments are tough to get. Still, we do our best to accommodate patients, especially since a lot of them have to drive a good 50 miles just to get to the satellite clinic. One such patient by the name of of Pat is not their real name, has developmental delays and as an adult is under the guardianship of their mother. Their mother's name for the sake of this story is called Polly. Polly is also not their real name. Polly can be a little gruff, but I try not to mind as she's never really mean, and Pat can be a little difficult at times. Anyways, a few days after Pat's last office visit, Polly called in. She asked to speak with Dr. Sam without Pat coming in. Now, dear naive little me thought I understood the situation. It wouldn't be the first time a family member of one of our patients had some concerns they wanted to discuss with a doctor without the patient being present, which we can do, by the way, if there's a signed form on file. And I know how far away Polly and Pat live, so I asked Polly if she wanted a phone visit, and she said she would rather come in and see Dr. Sam face to face. 50 miles is a long one-way drive just to talk to a doctor. But hey, that wasn't my business. I looked on Dr. Sam's schedule, and lo and behold, we had a cancellation the next day. Polly said she would take the appointment, so I scheduled the appointment and explained to Dr. Sam that Polly was coming in to talk about Pat without Pat being there in person, and Dr. Sam was completely fine with that. So in comes Polly at the scheduled appointment time. The rooming nurse escorted her to the room, and Dr. Sam went into the room. Dr. Sam stayed in the room for the scheduled half-hour time, and then Dr. Sam returned from the room. I was waiting for him in his office, so I saw his face when he entered, and let me tell you, it takes a lot to throw the doctor off his balance. He is so easygoing, and like I said, he has a wicked sense of humor, but the expression on Dr. Sam's face as he walked into his office was that of a man who had been mentally slapped in the face by something so unexpected that he was still trying to process it. He was also holding a piece of paper that he had not gone into the room with. I asked him what was going on. Dr. Sam then just looked at me and said, "Hey, did you know that this certain political candidate was the second coming of Christ, and not voting this specific candidate into office would doom all of us down to heck?" I said to him, "Well, I don't think I know that, and just how did you learn that?" He said to me, "Polly told me. It's all she wanted to talk about." And then she gave me this. He then hands me a piece of paper which was completely full of what appeared to be a full-page, single-spaced essay littered with words in capital letters, and there was some kind of schedule with dates and times with a popular political host's name written all over it. I wish I still had the paper. It was truly glorious in its awfulness, but the summary is that one specific political party was going to save America from the literal fires of the underworld, and anyone who didn't believe that was an actual demon. They also said again that this specific candidate for president is the literal second coming of Christ sent by God himself, and that Dr. Sam should definitely watch and listen to this political host whenever he had the chance, because he's a really smart man. And then she showed him his podcast schedule. This lady also wanted Dr. Sam to help him out and make photocopies of this letter and pass them out to the doctors and nurses in the clinic. At first, I was embarrassed, and then I just straight up got angry that I had given Polly one of the rarest appointment times that we could possibly give. We could have given it to an actual patient, but instead, we wasted it on her as she tried to spread her political religious propaganda. But after 5 minutes, we couldn't do anything but laugh in disbelief. It was just so completely ridiculous and over the top. Dr. Sam did end up sharing the letter, or at least the story of the letter, with some of the people in the clinic, but not in the way that Polly meant him to. By the end of the day, the letter had been carefully filed away in the garbage can. As for me, I made sure to put a note into Pat's file that if Polly ever called wanting to just talk to Dr. Sam alone, then the call was to be sent to me, and only me right away. It's lucky I did that, because the next month, guess who called? It was Polly. And guess what she wanted to do? She wanted another appointment to talk to Dr. Sam by herself. This time, I tried to get more specific. I said to her, "Would this be to discuss Pat or Pat's care with Dr. Sam?" She then said, "Oh no, Pat's fine." I then asked her, "Would this be to discuss what you discussed last time with Dr. Sam?" She then responded with a resounding yes. Now, I tried to be as polite as possible when I told her that unfortunately, we would not be able to accommodate her request, but Polly would not deter. She said to me, "When I called last time, they gave me an appointment with Dr. Sam. Why can't I have one this month?" Gritting my teeth, I kept my cool and I just said, "Last month we had a cancellation, and I thought you wanted to discuss Pat's health. Unfortunately, Dr. Sam's schedule is very full, and we need to keep appointments available for patients who need to see him for medical care." When Polly heard me say this, she sounded so disappointed that I almost felt bad, but not bad enough where I gave in to her weird demands, because I got over it pretty quickly and marveled at the sheer guts this woman had, who felt so entitled to Dr. Sam's time. time that she expected to be given not only one, but two of his appointment slots in which she might spread her political religious beliefs. Now, she hasn't tried again since 2022, but the elections are coming up in just over a year, so it's honestly only a matter of time before Polly strikes again. Wow, that Polly lady is absolutely ridiculous. I can't imagine working at a doctor's office that is already busy enough and is already so far away from the normal spot this doctor travels to. And then you finally have an appointment and you give it to someone you thought you could trust. You thought this lady was going to talk about Pat's health and that something like that was going to be discussed in this visit. But no, that's not what happens at all. Instead, this lady's trying to share her skewed religious and political beliefs as if it's some kind of fact of what's going to happen in the future. So good for the original poster for standing their ground and denying this lady an appointment. Those appointments are already hard enough to come by, and the last thing you need is to give it away to someone who's just going to waste it. An entitled Karen neighbor makes my life a living nightmare, constantly causing problems for me and my husband, and making it so our life is just absolute chaos. So we decide to get some revenge, and we end up buying the duplex that they live in and inform them that by the end of the month, they're gonna have to move out. And I've never felt more satisfied in getting revenge in my life. Here's what happened. My husband and I are in our late 30s and we are child-free, and we've been saving up for almost a decade to move to a tropical paradise. About 2 years ago, we bit the bullet and moved to our dream location. Housing here is super expensive. We're talking like the prices of a house in Hawaii, so all we could afford was half of a duplex. It is beautiful and on the water, with places for our boat. Unfortunately, the entitled Karen of this story, her boyfriend, who I will call Billy Bob, as well as her 3 gremlins live in the other unit. Now, there was a period of time where we went here just for a week or two, but now we live here full time. The entire duplex was owned by an older gentleman who rented out both sides, and the sides do not match at all. One side is a 5-bedroom, 3-bath, and the other side of the duplex is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and we bought the 5-bedroom. On our side of the property, we have 90% of the backyard. We have a gazebo and we have dockage. The other side has a small backyard, a patio, and maybe 15 feet of dockage. The rental lease says the renters are entitled to their specific backyards, but there were no fences or anything like that, so all the renters shared the entire backyard. After we bought the house, Karen immediately tried to throw her weight around that they expected to continue with that privilege. I told her if she asked politely, we could try to accommodate her. She thought this meant that she could use our backyard whenever she wanted. Well, one day my husband and I were enjoying some drinks outside when a delivery truck shows up to set up a giant blow-up thing in our backyard. I asked this entitled Karen what in the world she thought she was doing, and she said it was her kid's birthday. Then she had the gall to say it was a family and friends only event, so we had to stay inside of our house. Now, not wanting to be a total jerk and ruin some little girl's birthday party, I told the entitled Karen that after this, she had no access to our backyard, period. But this entitled Karen just shrugged and kept setting up for the party. Now, what happened next absolutely blew my mind, as during the party, a drunk adult wandered into our house, shocking all of us. Now, when this happened, I said to them, the Karen's house is on the other side. This drunk guy said to me, "Oh, Karen said she owned the whole property and to use whichever bathroom was available." I then directed him to the Karen's bathroom, and soon after she came storming into our house, screaming about how dare we make her look bad in front of her friends, and how selfish we are that we couldn't even spare one bathroom. She said we didn't deserve all this space with just us. I told Karen to get out of my house or I would be calling the police. She finally left and the party wrapped up shortly afterwards. After the party incident, we decided we need to clearly define the backyard and build a fence. While we were spending the money, we decided to update the patio, put in a fire pit and an outdoor kitchen. While the contractor was on site, this nosy Karen came in to try and investigate. Since the fence would be the last thing built, I was vague and just stuck to telling her about the patio update. You could see her face light up because, of course, in her mind, what's ours is actually hers. When the workers started on the fence, this entitled Karen came out screaming for the work to stop. I went outside and I told the workers to keep working, and I told this Karen to butt out. Of course, in true Karen fashion, she called the cops on us. What happened next was hilarity on my part after explaining to the cop that we were building a fence on our property, and the landlord, of which the Karen was not, knew exactly what was going on. When the cop gave Karen a stern lecture, I thought her head was going to explode. She went back into her house and slammed the sliding door so hard, it sounded like something cracked. We got our fence, and I thought that would be the end of it. it. But of course, there was more we had to deal with. One day, Billy Bob, who's the boyfriend of this entitled Karen, entered the picture suddenly, and he was as much of a terrible neighbor as this Karen. He would throw cigarette butts and empty beer cans over the fence, forever disrespecting his woman. I mean, I didn't know Paradise had trailer trash, but Billy Bob is the epitome of the stereotype. Billy Bob also has a boat, a 30-foot fishing boat to be precise, and of course, that side of the duplex only has 15 feet for dockage. Since we have so much dockage and only one boat, we rent out the other dockage spots as a month-to-month situation, and people come and go, so if we don't receive rent from them by the end of the month, and the boat just suddenly disappears, we think nothing of it. We had a renter who tied up their boat on the property line, but Billy Bob wanted to park his boat and needed that space right now. So while we were out of town, Karen and Billy Bob posed as us, told the renters to be gone at the end of the month, and then parked Billy Bob's boat at the dock. I only found out about it weeks later because the renter left a nasty review on the rental site that we use. They said we were rude and went back on the verbal agreement to let them stay for 3 more months. I thought to myself, what is this all about? But after a phone call, I quickly put 2 and 2 together. So I called the cops, who told Karen and Billy Bob that they needed to move their boat or they would be towed. Karen and Billy Bob started screaming the boat is fully on their property, even though it obviously wasn't on their property. They then changed their excuse to the fact that nobody can own water and that we were liars. Eventually, during all of this, Billy Bob punched a cop in the face and ended up going to jail. I honestly felt bad for the cops, so we took them all snacks the next day with an apology note for the neighbors' drama. I ended up winning my small claim suit against them for the lost rental income, but of course, I haven't seen a dime. I eventually convinced the dockage renters to come back and gave them a few months free as compensation. But with all things considered, this is right about when we decided to get some revenge. So with the collapsing market, we were trying to figure out what to do with our savings when a perfect opportunity opened up. The landlord who owned both properties was in desperate need of some cash and was tired of managing the property from 2,000 miles away. It also didn't help that this Karen was calling him weekly for every little thing, so this guy was willing to sell the property to us. His only stipulation was that we would let the poor single woman who has been renting from them for 8 years finish out their lease, and that lease would end in July. Now, since we have the money, we were trying to reinvest, and because now we get control over our neighbors, we absolutely jumped on this opportunity. Since we didn't need a realtor or mortgage, and an inspection had been done just a year ago for the old landlord to refinance, everything closed in just under 2 weeks. The entitled Karen, by the way, was aware of the changes in ownership. We registered the property under an LLC, but didn't know who until about 8 days ago. I went over to the Karen side of the house and I knocked on the door. The Karen answered and said to me, "What do you want, stupid?" I just smiled, handed her our landlord information, and sweetly reminded her that rent was due by Friday, and that she could just hand me the check if that was easier. Now, I've always heard descriptions of people's faces turning white, but this was the first time I've actually seen it. I told this awful entitled Karen that we are honoring her lease until the end of July, but afterwards she had better make plans to move because we intend to remodel it before these next tenants move in. And I'll honestly be so glad when this entitled Karen and her stupid family are finally off of our new property. It is honestly awful having neighbors who act like this. Like, these people moved to a paradise. They moved to their dream location, and now they have to deal with some weird Karen and her kids. I mean, talk about overstaying your welcome and treating pretty much everybody else around you like garbage. Like, there's no good excuse for the way she acted. I'm honestly blown away that the original landlord didn't try to evict them a long time ago. I mean, how could they possibly want somebody who has the cops called on them all the time, staying at their property and making a mess of things? So it really is a cool twist of fate that these people got to buy this place outright and basically give the eviction order for these stupid people. So hopefully these people move out sooner than later, because you and your husband deserve some peace in your life, because this entitled Karen has refused to allow you to have any. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today, 3 older Karens made me cry at my cash register, and I'm so tired of being treated this way, and I seriously don't know what to do. So for a bit of context, I'm a cashier, and there were 3 older women who went into my lane. I greeted them as usual, and immediately they said that the chips they wanted were on sale. So I said to them, okay, let me go ahead and scan it so I can see what the sale ridiculous. But of course, some of the chips were not on sale. I informed them that the chips were not on sale, and that's when the yelling started. They yelled at me saying the chips were definitely on sale, and that I'm not understanding them. I asked one of my coworkers to go check the sale for me, which of course, one brand of the chips that they wanted were in fact not on sale. They then started yelling at me to just take the chips off then, and I asked them, why are you having an attitude with me? I haven't done anything. Now, that may have not been the best thing for me to say, but I was tired of being yelled at for over 30 minutes about some chips when I tried being cooperative and understanding. The older lady didn't really take that well and started yelling about how I was disrespectful and didn't know anything. She said I was being disrespectful because she can see it on my face and that I have an attitude because of how I look. They all three started yelling at me and I simply couldn't take it anymore and I started to cry. One of my coworkers rushed me into the break room so that they could deal with them and give me time to take a breather. An hour goes by and they are still arguing at the manager about some chips, and one of the ladies actually tries to get into the break room that I was in. One of my coworkers, who was there to comfort me, told her that she can't be in here and that this is an employee break room. She ignored my coworker and started telling me not to mind the older ladies and that she is old and she says stuff because she's old. Instead, that I need to gain courage and be a man. She wasn't there to apologize. She was telling me that the older lady didn't do anything wrong and that I'm just sensitive. Another coworker rushed her out, and not long after, the other lady tries to come in. She says she wants to give me a hug, but my coworker immediately escorts all three women out. This has seriously mortified me, as I don't understand what was happening before everything went downhill. My manager did let me know that it's absolutely not my fault, so I guess that is something to be happy about. Wow, I can't believe the police were not called. These people literally went into the back break room and were still choosing to harass you. Like, seriously, that is messed up. Working customer service is already hard enough. It's a thankless job and you have to deal with crazy people like this on a daily basis. Like, the original poster didn't do anything wrong. They were just trying to clarify a sale that they had in their store, even though these three ladies were blatantly lying. So truly, I'm so sorry this happened to the original poster. Hopefully nothing like this happens in the future, because truly, you did nothing wrong and you did not deserve it. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for telling a guy off at my store after the way he talked to me and my coworkers? Here's what happened. 12 or 13 years ago, I used to push carts at a store that I will simply refer to as the Wall. And if you ever worked there, you will probably know why. Anyways, my job back then was helping put carts from the parking lot back into cart racks around the store, and to help people get heavy items they purchased into their cars. One day around a holiday, I got called to help someone move a large grill into their pickup truck. The thing was seriously almost 5.5 feet long and weighed about 180 pounds. The two of us and a security guard just managed to get the thing in the guy's truck bed, and I offered to go climb in the bed and tie it down with anything he had available to do it with. And that's when things started to go bad. He asked me if the Wall had any tie downs. I was new to the department back then, but I had been warned about this request. Basically, he was asking me if there was anything left from the Christmas trees that we sold in the garden, since we used to put the trees in nets to stop them from making a mess when they were being brought home. I told him that I'd been told by my coworker that those are usually gone by the end of January, and because it was April, it had simply been too long. I then asked him if he knew anyone who had something that they could use to help him tie the grill down. After he told me he didn't have anything in his truck and no one could come help him, I went through a few other standard options I could have suggested, and he turned all of them down. I finally only had one option to deploy, so I told him, since the security guard was there, that he could stand watch while we went into the store and picked up some bungee cords quickly. I even told him that we could cut through the line, and no sooner had I said that, did he give me an awful stare and ask for my manager. I told him without hesitation that I could call my assistant manager, to which he agreed. The assistant manager, somehow even more politely than I had done it, went through all the same options as I did and ended up in the same place, and this guy absolutely lost it. He started cussing up a storm and said we were trying to rob him by making him pay even more for something than what the grill cost. On the other hand, I do understand that a grill that large and heavy, even back then, must have cost a ton of money, but the bungee cords only would have been another $5 or $10 to his purchase in total, and it wasn't worth getting this upset about. Finally, he decided that he had spent enough and wasn't willing to give the Wall any more money, stating that he wanted a return. I told him that was fine, we could take the grill off his truck truck, go back into the store and return it, but he refused, saying that he wanted us to do the return without him going back in because we were going to rob him if he did, and he didn't dare step back inside the store. Well, the assistant manager told him that we could do that, but that it would take longer, to which he again agreed and said he'd park nearby if necessary. I called someone from our returns department because they had to take his basic information from him to process this return, and then I walked the grill back to returns on the other side of the store with my coworker. With the grill on the pallet, we rolled it up to his car on and explained to her what was going on. By the time I got back, they had just managed to get him to go park somewhere. Keep in mind that by this time, he had been blocking traffic with his truck for over 15 minutes. He finally goes to park, and at first, I'm hesitant to go get carts out of the parking lot in case that somehow sets him off, but the security guard tells me to just stay close and I should be fine. I start 2 rows in front of that guy, then I do the row next to him, the row that he's on, and the one behind him. Keep in mind that each row takes about 5 to 10 minutes to do, and if he had just gone inside, he would have been done before I finished the second row. Without enough carts in the rows I just cleared, I realize I have to move 2 rows behind him, but I also have this sinking feeling that this will be the thing that sets him off because I know he's watching me, and he is set on making sure someone is paying attention to his problems. There's nothing for it though. I have to clean the row that needs the most attention. Sadly though, I was right, and as soon as I get into that row, he peels out of his parking space and stops in the road, once again blocking traffic, but this time even more so. I called my assistant manager back as I ran to where he parked, and the security is heading back that way as well. We all get there at about the same time, and he's going off more than ever now. He's saying all these things and calling us this and that with the most colorful language this guy probably knows. And then there's me, the assistant manager, and security just trying to get this guy to calm down while he's literally turning red with anger. I swear, it's almost like he's going to try and fight one of us, he's so mad. Finally, he takes it a step too far and threatens to call the police on us, claiming once again that we were stealing from him, which sadly for him was something that we could retaliate against. Both myself and the assistant manager pulled out our phones and dialed 911. If he calls the cops, we are gonna call the cops. Thankfully, the woman from returns comes back with this money just after this happens, but she's afraid to get near him, so I take it to him, and I tell him to get away from me and my coworker, since I have his plates and his name by this point. He takes the money and flips us all off until he drives away incredibly aggressive. I found out later that the guy was known in the store for being a borrower, meaning that he had bought the grill with the intent to use it over the holiday weekend just to show off to his friends what he had bought or something like that, so that's why he wouldn't call anyone and why he didn't want to buy the bungee cords. He would likely have returned the grill the following Monday or Tuesday. He didn't want anyone to know what he was doing, and he didn't actually intend to spend any money with the wall, but obviously he wouldn't admit that, and that's what caused the problems. He had apparently done this with TVs for big games though, so that's how people knew about him. As far as I know, after that incident, he was banned from this store for life, and thankfully, as long as I worked there, he never tried to come back. I also never got in trouble for what I said, so I wanted to know, was I the jerk for losing my patience in that moment and talking to this guy in the way that I did? No, you are not the jerk. This guy clearly had an agenda, and you just so happened to be unfortunately blocking that agenda. Like, this guy's a complete weirdo, a complete creep through and through. There was literally no reason for this guy to act that way. He tried every angle in the book. He tried being super aggressive, he tried to threaten to return it to the store, he tried to claim you were trying to rob him, and then he tried to be like, oh, I'm calling the police, how dare you? Like, this guy clearly was just being super sketchy. So no, your response was perfectly reasonable. This guy clearly escalated this in a way that was completely inappropriate, and if I was in your shoes, I probably would have reacted exactly the same way. A group of entitled kids in our neighborhood are ringing our doorbell at all hours of the night, and at this point, I'm so tired of it, I seriously don't know what to do. So for a bit of background, we are a family living in an apartment with those typical doorbells that make a deafening noise. They're so loud that you can hear the bells from other apartments ringing. Normally, we hear this sound and we expect it to be the mailman or someone from our home. However, last year, we began hearing children ringing our doorbell and running away. It was an isolated incident, and I thought they wouldn't do it again, right? But to our surprise, the next day, they were there again, repeatedly ringing the doorbell. This eventually became a routine. The doorbell rang once, twice, 3 times in a row, until one day my brother-in-law, whom we will affectionately call Cricket, Cricket, decided to confront these kids. He went out to the balcony and scolded them, and they didn't come back for a long period of time, almost a year. But yesterday, the kids rang the doorbell again. Imagine the scene, 7 kids ringing the doorbell and running like crazy. Now, I was already completely irritated, and I couldn't take it anymore. So I ran out on the balcony and I screamed at these kids. But guess what? At 2 o'clock in the morning, the kids were back. Ring it, come on, do it! They were encouraging each other. But this time, Cricket came out to the balcony and shouted at them to go ahead and ring that doorbell. And then when the kids heard that, they ran away in fear. Well, fast forward, and today when we returned home, we saw the kids getting ready to ring the doorbell again. And guess what our reaction was? We taunted them. We said, come on, ring the doorbell again. We shouted this also in a playful tone. At that moment, my dad noticed an adult man, apparently responsible for them, and went to explain the situation. But this guy said something I honestly didn't expect. He said, "Why are you shouting at my kids? You should be shouting in prison." A lady who lives in the apartment below came to talk to us about why we were arguing. After a brief explanation, she said that the kids had rung the doorbell of her 80-year-old friend and even broke something of hers. Her friend got angry and talked to the kid's mother. The kids said that they were lying, and the mother simply believed her children. The neighbor from the apartment below decided to intervene and said that she would talk to a friend of the kid's mother to try and resolve the situation. In the meantime, I'm thinking of filming the kids ringing the doorbell just to show to their mother. If she reacts negatively again, I won't hesitate to call the police and present all the evidence that we have. First off, you should have been recording them after the first incident. After you chased them off a year ago, why would you not get some kind of doorbell that also doubles as a camera? Like, those are all over the place, you can get them at any kind of store, and it would probably solve all of your problems. Like, that would have been the first thing I would have bought, because these kids are clearly up to no good. They're bored and they want to bother people, and that is not okay. And secondly, I also would call the police. Like, the next time that happens, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, ring the doorbell. I would say to them, the police are on their way. Like, it really does seem like there's no negotiating with these people. The parents are clearly stupid and they're not going to do anything to stop this, but the cops absolutely would. So hopefully this all gets worked out, because those kids are being super annoying, and there's no reason for them to be ringing your doorbell at 2 o'clock in the morning. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.